Hey everyone, Lashaluk and Pyjams here again, talking about the weekly Shonen Jump manga chapters.
Hey guys. So yeah, we couldn't do our usual Sunday stream. There was other streams that Luke was doing, and I was busy with some stuff. And even today, I had like a last minute scheduling change, so we won't be having a as long a stream as per usual. Just as a heads up.
Yeah, just a heads up. So I guess we'll just dive right into the chapters. First thing I want to talk about is like thank you Shonen Jump for giving Witch Watch the cover this week.
Oh yeah, we got the lead cover page and a color page, and color page coming next issue too. So yeah, it looks like Witch Watch is going to be. I guess they're like really big gag manga for.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's by the assistant to Gintama, so that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean he's also a veteran. He's published several other series before
Yeah.
and gotten anime adaptations.
Yeah. But also the author is definitely teasing us now because we have a certain other person part of the group there with Nemu right on there, and she's not in the house yet.
Yeah, Luke needs to bring this up until it happens.
I was gonna keep bringing it up until it happens. Well, given what happened this week, it seems like he's pushing that area. He's like, oh, you want Nemu in the house? Well, you're gonna have to wait.
Yeah, it seems so. And I know we want to jump into the chapters because it'll be a shorter stream. But did you want to? There was another tweet I think by Inagaki you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. I got the tweet up. I've got the tweet up. So it's here. It's this tweet right here. So
basically, a lot of stuff's happening for Dr. Stone in the coming month. We're getting the Ryusui special as was advertised. We're getting like a special manga for Ryusui as well to go with that. A stage production was announced recently, and I guess they're having an orchestra. I think I heard about that.
Yeah, they're having an orchestra. They're having the final volume being released. But the most interesting part is this part right here at the end.
Yep, jump the continuation of the manga in the magazine.
Yeah. Now, this is something that I was like, wait, what? Because this definitely came out of nowhere.
Yeah, and we wanted to bring this up because for those of you who've been with us for a while, Dr. Stone was like our favorite series to talk about and is like among our favorites for both of us. So if there's a continuation, we have to talk about the possibilities.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I retweeted this to Shonen OG to get his response. And he's kind of on the fence about it.
Yeah, and I did read that the discussion you guys had, and I understand what he's saying because it does say in the translation continuation, but of course this is a Google translation. These aren't Inagaki's exact words. It's the accuracy of this will largely depend on how well this is translated, because it could be that Inagaki is talking about that Ryusui manga special that I mentioned before, and it might just be some spin-offs, which would still be nice, honestly.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But based on the way at least it's phrased within the translation, it sounds like continuation. But neither of us can read Japanese. We can't confirm either way if that was the intention.
No.
But you can definitely see from like the first even reply that a lot of people in English have translated the same way and reached the same conclusion that, oh my God, are we getting a continuation? Because one of the things that would have stopped it is Boichi, he had an upcoming manga that was going to be published about like food or something. And I think that got canceled because of like, personal circumstances and whatnot, which is unfortunate, but I think he's doing okay now because he's putting videos on YouTube and everything. But if he's not working on, if he's either not getting back into that project or starting a new project, he doesn't have anything more going on. And Inagaki, I think, is still working on Trillion Game, but he hasn't advertised it as much recently.
Yeah, hey Anna, but yeah, he did advertise it like in one of his tweets recently, but that was just one tweet. But yeah, so on the off chance that this is a continuation, my idea for it would be like, okay, we had realistic science for the first like if they're going to do like Dr. Stone Part 2, we had realistic science for the first part, but with this second part, we can go with what Boichi had in mind for the Dr. Stone reboot, which is like full-on science fiction.
Or yeah, basically more cutting edge theoretical science, some of which arguably doesn't work, but most of it's fine. So yeah, and I don't necessarily know how I would want a continuation. We talked about this before, because of course we could. Senku has a big project he's working on, and it could introduce all kinds of complications to the storyline if it was actually completed. But at the same time, just seeing like our characters for a couple of more chapters of what their lives were like afterwards, even if we don't see the completion of that project, and or us just seeing maybe filling in the gaps that kind of got rushed over to get to this conclusion, like how was the world rebuilt to this point? All those are possible options I'd be okay with for a continuation.
Yeah, I mean, another continuation idea they could do is like have the Ishigami villagers be get more how they would get more accustomed to like modern tech. So like say I don't know, turquoise using a washing machine.
Oh yeah, that would be kind of fun, just like utility of modern tech. And actually, I think that would also be kind of nice because a lot of what Dr. Stone taught people was about, science and how we got to where we are. But I think there's a lot of machines that we use in our current day that we don't know how it works. And then we didn't really get in the manga that Senku could just explain, okay, this is how it works. This is how it came to be. And it would just be like Dr. Stone in the modern day.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would work in story wise, but it could work potentially. And Ann Arbor, you also bring up a good point that Dr. Stone had a pretty good ending, somewhat controversial, but a pretty good ending. And so a continuation could maybe ruin that. So I could understand your protest to a continuation.
Yeah, and I can understand people's protests to a continuation, but if Inagaki does have a story that he wants to tell, then by all means, he has the right to tell it.
Yep. And I think the other thing I want to bring up with this is, again, we're not confirming that there's any sort of continuation. This is a tweet, like on the Controlled Chaos Discord. I've also brought up like a Twitter exchange between Inagaki and Hiro Mashima, author of Fairy Tale and Eden Zero. And they were just chatting and congratulating each other and, being professionals. And I was saying in the Discord, it's like, man, if manga was a super huge industry, like video games and movies and TVs, like if people saw this interaction between these two major mangakas, they'd be like, oh man, are these guys going to work together on a manga series or something? And I mean, it's probably not going to happen, and it's just a tweet conversation. And much in the same way, this might just be Inagaki saying, there's a lot to look forward to, and maybe some more stuff in the magazine, especially because he ended with the question mark. So
Okay.
that maybe he has ideas, but he's not sure if he wants to go through with it or if Jump will be okay with it, because Jump is going through some changes of their own.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's which is something that it's something that I definitely want to like not Jump itself, but Jump Plus mainly. It's something that I really want to do as like a discussion at some point. Like, are there too many short series? Because I don't know if you've noticed, like on the Shonen Jump unofficial Twitter page, you'll see like series like that one series that everyone was raving about, the psychological thriller series, ending in 16 chapters. You got this series ending in 8 chapters. This series ending in 10 chapters. I'm just there like thinking like, is there too many short series now?
Well, that could be an interesting discussion because I would almost argue no. Short stories by themselves are interesting and I think have a place. And I would argue, especially in today's age, it might honestly be better just because it's hard to retain an audience for several years on end. And I, even with Witch Watch, who took the cover page, I still say that the author's last work, Astro Lost in Space, which was a short series, was way stronger than what he's writing now. And I think that's partially because it was a short story he had fully planned out and he knew every story beat he wanted to go into. While
Okay.
ongoing shonen, it's like you have stories like Doctor Stone, which are mostly planned out and are executed very well. But then you have stories, not to throw necessarily anyone specific under the bus, but like maybe Black Clover and My Hero, which weren't as well planned out. And I say that just because Tabitha right now is taking some time off to specifically plan out the final arc, which is nice. But that also, I think, to me suggests he didn't have it perfectly as planned out as he wanted to early on.
Yeah, yeah,
He had an
because
ending in mind.
he was going on record saying I want to make it as long as One Piece, but he didn't plan out for it being as grueling as he thought it was.
Yeah, and that's understandable because things happen. And same with Horikoshi. He had like a story in mind, but even he's said on record that, yeah, this wasn't exactly the course of the story I had in mind and had to make a lot of changes. And so, in that sense, I think having a shorter series where you can just write what you want and go off on a high note is probably a good thing. But sure, we can have that discussion maybe
Yeah,
in a future video.
yeah, I would want to do it like as like a live stream with the other guys at Control Chaos, could get a lot of more people's thoughts on it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, is there anything more with this tweet we want to do before we go back to
No,
manga?
not that I can think of.
All right,
So
then let's get into our series for the week.
yeah, so I guess we can do My Hero Academia first, since it's been a while since we've actually talked about it.
No, sure, why not?
Yeah.
And Ann Arbor, I am those other guys. I'm so flattered. Yes, you are.
Yeah. Yes, you are. But yeah, before we actually talk about the chapter this week, what's your thoughts on Vigilante's ending?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So for those who don't know, My Hero's Vigilante, a spin-off of the My Hero series, which actually acts as a prequel to the story, is going to end in one more chapter. I think it's in a week or two. And so Luke hasn't really been reading this one to my knowledge, but I've been reading it fairly regularly. Uh, my overall thoughts is this series has its own highs and lows like My Hero, and it's not one I can easily recommend to most people. I feel like it's generally meant for people who really enjoy My Hero and want more from that world, which usually even I don't necessarily qualify in that category. But I think what's interesting about Vigilantes, on the other note, is if you kind of like My Hero and are considering reading this, is My Hero is about Deku getting his superpowers from the top hero and learning to eventually make the best use of the most powerful quirk. While this is kind of more in line what you might have expected My Hero to be, which is a hero or a guy with very weak powers who couldn't make it as a hero, but ultimately does make a difference in society and gets recognition slowly over time as a vigilante. And so I'm pretty happy with the series as a whole. I think its lowest, it doesn't reach the highs of My Hero, and even some of its lower arcs are arguably worse than some of the lower arcs in the actual My Hero series, just because it kind of drags at points. But I think it's a worthwhile story for not only the backstory, but just watching the main character develop from being extremely weak to very strong, which I just enjoy. I like his progression. I will say the final battle may be taken too long, but I'm very satisfied like watching it all end. Although I also say that some of the when this last chapter they had a bunch of cast members. They're like, "Oh, this is what these guys are up to," and I'm like, I don't even remember half of these guys.
Oh,
Were important very early on, maybe, but then they stopped mattering. So
oh,
this story has a lot of issues, but I think I'm glad I read it, and I think it made the My Hero experience for me overall better. Um, but honestly, if you want a better My Hero, it probably comes in the form of either Tiger and Bunny or Talentless Nana. But that's a different
okay.
discussion.
Oh, by the way, speaking of Talentless Nana, I finally got off my butt and actually started considering. I must say, episode 2, the ending, I was just like, oh my god, she did not do what I think she did, but yet
Mm,
she did do what I thought she did.
yeah. I love that ending, and it still gets more cool stuff to come in that
Yeah,
series. So I'm
I
glad you're
was on
liking
it.
it.
Yeah, I was honestly surprised because the guy who was focused on in the first episode, the one that can neutralize the powers, I honestly thought he was going to be. I honestly thought he was going to be the main male character of the series.
Yeah, and that's part of them trying to throw us off.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why during our manga review, I wanted to keep as little detail as possible.
Yeah.
Because this is a series that you absolutely need to go in with as little information as possible.
Okay.
And at most, it's like knowing, okay, it's like my hero, but also some Death Note.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So they basically did Taiju with that guy.
Yeah, but I think more on purpose. Because I think with Taiju, it felt more like Taiju. Well, Senku was always probably going to be the main character, but Taiju, he was kind of pushed aside more to the back of the story. Because it's like we could have seen more of him in the Tsukasa Empire, but we didn't because I guess he wasn't pulling as well. But at the same time, I think with the male lead in Nana, they just wanted to kind of throw you off. It was all a mislead from the beginning.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, so now I think we should just get into talking about the actual My Hero chapter itself. So, end of the derby fight.
Yep, I mean, I guess that kind of goes into how this chapter ends. It ends with the derby fight.
Yeah, so I just gotta say now, how many more chapters do you think are left? Because honestly, 25 max for me.
Yeah, that's seems like a decent estimate, but it's hard for me to estimate chapters because we tried it with Dr. Stone and that didn't work out too well.
Yeah.
So I'm a little hesitant to put on like a hard number, but I will say I feel like it's probably going to end this year. So at most, that's like what, 6 months of 6 times 4 is 24. So it would be about what you said.
Yeah.
Minus any hiatuses. So it's like it's hard to say any more than 25, really. The only reason it would go on past this year is if we had more breaks for like Horikoshi to be like, cool, I just need some more for the very last stuff. But otherwise, I think you're right. I think it was about 30 chapters.
Yeah, because really we only have Toga, Shigaraki, and All For One left, and that's it.
Yeah, we might do more with Spinner. I think he's doing some stuff right now.
Maybe.
But yeah, you're right. We just defeated one of the big bads, and we're probably not going to fully finish out his story till like the last or second to last chapter.
The last. So anyway, let's just get into the chapter itself. So we start off with a flashback to the night before everything goes down, and we have Deku and Todoroki talking to each other, and Deku's like, I can't believe they're going to make you fight him, obviously referring to Darby, his brother, and Todoroki's like, oh no, I actually want to do this, even if my old man is going to gripe about not fulfilling his promise. I think if we think of it as a punishment, then Hawks and them made a wise choice. So I'm not sure exactly what he means by this. If we think of it as a punishment, like he doesn't get to fight Darby and not kind of like get that redemption for what he did. Is that what he's referring to here?
I think that's what he's referring to, but I'll be honest, I was also confused by this line. And I think that's the thing with this chapter. People really enjoyed it for, what it concluded, but at the same time, I was very confused by the actual details of what happened.
Yeah. So yeah. If anything, I would have thought Hawks would be one to be in the Derby fight as well, considering Darby pretty much almost killed him, or rather should have killed him.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but anyway, Todoroki goes on to explain Darby's existence is my family's crime. Besides, in order to reach the heights I'm aiming for, I can't run from it. This new move of mine will get me past that wall to those heights. As we see Todoroki basically have the flames of Endeavor on his chest, which is a nice, cool detail. Like he's finally accepted that, despite what his father did, his father is still a part of him, and he can't run away from that.
Well, before I continue, Hayes, thanks for joining us. And it sounds like you can't stick around, but I appreciate you jumping in for a second.
Yeah, thanks, Hayes.
Yep. And yeah, so I think a lot of like what, as Hayes was saying, me being confused with this chapter, and I guess he was a little bit himself, is that the mechanics of Todoroki's new move kind of don't make full sense to me because he's like channeling heat through a circulation, which, yes, that the circulatory system is responsible for temperature regulation. And he's using that to help mix his cold and hard parts
Yeah,
to
that
make a new power, but it wasn't like steam like we were thinking. It's more just like a new kind of fire.
it's more like the if we're going to do a comparison to one coming up, it's more like Dopo's fire from Ayashimon.
Yeah, maybe that's the other thing.
Yeah,
But I'm honestly not 100% while I was reading. But based on the way it ended, I'm thinking you're right. I'm thinking it's like an icy flame.
yeah. Which, hey, make that your hero name, Todoroki. Blazing Ice. There we go.
No.
Steal Lopmon's move from Digimon.
Oh, oh yeah, I see.
Yeah,
And Ann Arbor, he is creating flames with negative temperature. Okay, I
yeah.
kind of see what you mean. At least if we use like the.
But
Oh, okay.
still, but still, it says on page. He says on page 3, I can cycle heat and chilled blood throughout to create stability inside. Okay, how does that work?
I mean,
Because
I think based on the panel above, he's trying to say he's using his heart to do that, just because that's what the heart. One of the things the heart
okay,
does besides pumping oxygen. But it's like the way it's explained. Like I only got that through previous knowledge I have. I don't know how other people are able to follow this so well, but I think at the end of the day, it's just really cold fire is all you
okay,
really need to know.
fair enough, fair enough. But
And
one thing,
symbolically, it has to do with his dad like doing differently than what his father wanted him to do.
yeah, yeah. But one thing I do want to say, which was a nice touch, is as Todoroki's thinking about all of this. He's also thinking about that um, he can be the one to infer the reason of why he was born into the family, and he's specifically thanking Midoriya for that. So that's a nice touch. Like he finally understands what Midoriya was saying, or probably way back in the sports festival where he's saying like it's your quirk, not your father's.
Yep, and that yeah, I'll agree. That was a nice moment
Yeah,
because I might
but
not
also,
understand everything here, but I did understand the sentiment, which is
yeah,
nice.
but also as well, I've got to say the most horrifying thing about this chapter: Todoroki smiled.
Oh wow, you're calling the horrifying. He looks kind
Yeah,
of adorable to me.
don't smile, Todoroki. You're supposed to be you're supposed to be so kind, but this evil like I don't smile for anyone.
Nah, I don't think that's fully his character, but
I
at
know.
the
I'm
same
just
time,
joking. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. But
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, and hi, Carl. Thanks for
Oh,
joining.
hi, Cole. Yeah, we've just talked
Just
about
started my hero.
My Hero, and Pyjamas has just said his thoughts on Vigilante's ending.
Yeah, a little
So
bit.
yeah, the the move that okay, they changed the name of the move. If I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but they've changed the name of the move, haven't they, from the last chapter? Because here it's called
Uh,
Ice
maybe.
Crash Cold Flames Pale Blade.
I actually don't remember what the last chapters called it.
Let me quickly just bring it up. Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, Flash. Oh yeah, last that time they called it Flash Fire Fist Phosphor.
Yeah, and now they're calling it Icebound Crash Cold Flames Pale Blade.
Yeah,
Just
there's
rolls
might
right
be
off.
a different follow up move. That's what I'm gonna get it as because otherwise that doesn't make any sense. You're right.
Okay, fair. I guess we'll go with that. But yeah, it. But yeah, the flames, which I assume are white based on the paneling here, like a white icy flame, are just engulfing Darby here, and saying like, oh, maybe this is a way to cool your head. And Darby is just thinking to himself like, so he got himself a body that could withstand scorching heat, and he found the power to chill my own infernal, the perfect man for this job, huh? And Darby goes on, it's like, oh, you go on and on about right and wrong choices, but I knew it. We might share the same blood, but we ended up really differently, really different. Yes, you certainly did, Darby. And he continues on saying, a warped rail can never mangle with a straight and narrow one. The limitations of superpowered society. That's all. That's us, you hear me? Running in parallel but forever apart. Now burn to ash, die for our sake. But of course, he's saying this while he's getting while he's getting his own scorching fire going at him, and he's probably dying at this point himself.
Yep, we are literally seeing him like just bone and muscle at this point. And I think in Just King's review, he brought up, man, I don't know how the doctors are going to fix this one, even by
I
their
don't
standards.
think I don't think they are. I think what will happen, we'll probably get a little bit of this at the beginning of the next chapter where Darby wants to say something, but it's too late, and he just like dies right then and there.
Oh, I mean, there could be. I'm skeptical about whether or not he'll pass, just because, again, as Just King pointed out in his review, he did say that the family probably are going to get to say some final goodbyes before, because it feels like they set that up. But you could also be right.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
Horikoshi will go that direction.
well, they can say the final goodbyes. It's just he won't be able to hear them, and that might be the tragedy of it all. Because if you remember what happened in Bleach with Gin, the tragedy of Gin is that he died before anybody knew what he was trying to do.
No, I see what you mean, and it could be that way. It's just if based on the setup, it seems like
Yeah,
he'll talk to his family. But we'll talk
maybe.
about that a bit more. I just want to address Carl's comments
Okay.
and say, yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said with Vigilantes. It's bittersweet to see it end, but it's great to see Koichi's character reach this point. I'm not sure if we'll get an anime. I'd be totally cool with watching it because it'd be nice to see everything now that I know all the mysteries behind things. Because I think Vigilantes also the big like mystery elements of what's going on behind the scenes. And now that I know, it'll be nice to see all that stuff in context. But yeah, I do hope we get to see all our main characters figure out what they're up to at the very end. And it looks like Carl's reading the chapter.
Oh, sorry, Carl. Sorry,
No, that's
Carl.
fine. I think he's probably just gonna catch up with it and then get back to us.
Yeah.
Let's see. So continuing onward with the chapter. So yeah, then we're seeing all the other supporting heroes from Endeavor's agency getting caught up in Dobby's attacks. And what was her name? Burning, I think. She was
I think so.
basically, yeah, I think she was basically just telling him to not worry about them. And Todoroki has like this epiphany moment where he's just saying that he felt really alone on a path to find himself with everything that was happening. And he felt like his friends had gone very far, but they were always waiting. And Class A never left anyone behind. And they were there to reassure him and blah, blah, blah. Again, I think I talked about this with One Smart. The bonds between Class 1A don't always sell as well with me just because they never felt as tight-knit as I think the story wants me to like make them feel like, because we did have some moments with them, but not enough that makes me think that they're all like good friends. And
Yeah.
as a side point, I mean, hardcore My Hero fans might disagree with me on that, but yeah, I don't really feel it.
I mean the ones that make sense to me for Todoroki's story are Deku, obviously, Bakugo, Ida, and Momo.
Yeah, I would agree. All those work really great for Todoroki. And maybe there's probably one or two more you can toss in there if you stretch.
Oh yeah. I would say as well. Kirishima and Suyu, because Suyu did have that moment after they went and rescued Bakugo, and how she was like um, giving her feelings of what they all did.
Oh yeah, I do remember. Was Todoroki there?
Todoroki was there because
Okay, yeah.
he used his ice to propel them away from the fight.
Oh yeah, well I know he was there for the rescue Bako, but was he there when Suyu was
Yeah,
giving out?
yeah, he was. He
Okay,
was.
and that's what I mean. There's probably moments in the story which I'm not perfectly thinking of, so that's why I said the characters Luke mentioned and maybe a few others we may not remember from one-on-one moments kind of work, but the whole class just I don't know. Like they had a whole thing where they saved Deku and they worked together to do that. So there's I guess some extent you can say their teamwork exists there. But I would say if they just showed a few members of the class rather than like the whole class like they do, I might have been able to buy into it a bit more. Because like,
Yeah,
what is his relationship with like Seru and even Uraraka?
I mean,
Um,
with Uraraka, at least she's like pushed to the background. But Ashido, in front of Momo,
yeah, I mean that's true. Mina, I mean, she may have gotten involved with her hijinks at most. So yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up real quick. It's just one of the weaknesses of MHA. I feel when I read it.
yeah,
And then we get a flashback to Mount Lady when she was telling them about ultimate moves when they were doing that part of the training. And then we see Todoroki about to use his ultimate move. And he tells Dabi, no, we're going to mingle whether you like it or not. So please just stop already. And then calling it his move Great Glacier Aegir, I
I
think.
think that's how you. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, then we get a clip panels of them as kids and just the whole landscape frozen over. And so just like the way he said we're going to mingle whether you like it or not makes me think that he's like we're going to sit down and have a chat. So that's why I think that even though this fight is over, we're eventually going to see Dabi and Todoroki talk, but with the other members of Todoroki's family there.
Yeah, I can understand what you say. I can understand what you're saying. I mean, but I would like it for like to be the tragedy of, because Todoroki's family is nothing but a tragedy, and like
It
this would
is.
be the ultimate nail in the coffin. Like, well, Endeavor, I would like him to say something, but like his mum and his two other siblings, they don't get to say anything.
Mhm. That would okay. I see what you mean. You think it'll just be more emotionally satisfying for you, and that's
Yeah,
fair. I just don't know if that's what Horikoshi is going for or not. And hey, Rex, thanks for joining us. And I agree, lots of good chapters this week.
yeah, particularly Mission Yo's core family, which we'll get into.
We will. That's I think. Well, it was my chapter of the week. I don't know what yours was.
It was definitely my chapter week. No contest.
Yep. So lots to talk about with that one. But with my hero, I think we're done.
Yeah, I've got nothing else to say. So, if anyone in the chat wants to suggest which one we talk about next, feel free. Granted, we're not talking about everything this week. We've cut down on a few things because we can't be here for as long as we want to be. So if you guys just want to suggest a series we talk about, we let us know. But yeah, Carl, I hope we get to see where Knuckle Dusters.
He's talking
And
about vigilantes and that basically
yeah,
all the main characters, what they're up to.
oh,
Because
okay,
that's kind of left alone to a bit, except so maybe at the end we'll see what's
okay.
up with that. Because
But
I
is
honestly
it
thought they were going to pass away. It looked like they were setting up for them to like just die straight up, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. And
okay?
then Carl also says, "I'm not going to remember that new move Shoto used." Nah, me neither, man. Because it's the end, and we're never going to see it again. As for what's mentioned in the beginning of the chapter, Shoto's journey came full circle. Love how they actually made use. Yeah, I would agree with that. Of the way blood circulated throughout the body. And then Shoto took advantage, amped it up even further. Okay, so that's like the symbology of it. So thanks for highlighting that, Carl. And so
Okay.
I do appreciate having like people here who are like big fans of other series that we're not as big into, so you guys can explain to us a little bit.
Yeah, which does help. I guess people are not responding to it, so I
Yeah,
think we
we'll
could
just pick
talk.
a series then.
let's talk about Ayashimon because that is a pretty quick chapter, despite the fact I made the complaint of it being of it having too much exposition this week. It pretty much did not have as much as I thought it was going to have.
All right, yeah, sure. Oh, and and Rex wants to do Undead Unluck. It seems like.
Okay.
So
Oh, we can do Undead Unluck first since he mentioned
sure.
it. Okay.
I'm fine with that. Undead Unluck was another, like when I was looking at what people like thought were chapter of the week. I think it was Yozakura, Undead Unluck, and My Hero were up there. I think there was one other series, but I don't remember which one.
It was probably what it was probably One Piece.
Oh yeah, I think it was, but I don't know what's going on in One Piece. So
yeah. I basically what's going on in One Piece is that one of the big it's the fight between one of the big emperors, one of the big bads is probably ending as well.
Ah, nice. Okay, that makes sense. Anyway, so Undead Unluck chapter 110.
Yeah.
So, and we kind of start off where we left with Rip having used a suicidal attack in order to take out Andy. And in doing so, and when I say suicidal, I don't mean he sacrificed himself. I mean, he sacrificed Latla. And Latla is just saying, it's like, don't worry, Layla, your dashing prince is coming to save you. And we just see Rip like just cradling Latla in his arms. And Andy is just kind of seeing this through his unconsciousness. And while he's doing that, we see Victor stepping up and saying, hey, are you just going to let them win? And apparently we learned here that Victor doesn't talk to him in his head very often, which I guess kind of checks out, but at the same time, I'm not sure why.
I guess it's because Victor's like Victor's just like a bit of a I want to say like I want to be the one in charge, but at the same time I can't be the one in charge because you're here. So I think he just doesn't have anything to say to Andy at most times.
Could be. And I'm just going to read Carl's stuff. He's just finishing off stuff for My Hero. I think he just finished the chapter, so he is just letting us know his thoughts. After the story comes to an end, Hero Society won't be able to ignore creation of villains out of their own hands who can come clean. Yeah, that is a good point. But at the same time, if I may, Carl, I feel like in large ways, part of what My Hero is trying to do is that society often creates a lot of its own problems. I mean, there's this whole thing where it's like the ills of society are kind of what lead people to do bad things. And they will probably address it in My Hero, but I also wonder how far they could possibly even do that. Like they may make steps. I think that's the most we're going to see, though. Maybe like, okay, we're going to start some reformations or try to catch things early, but that might be as far as they get. That's just me. I don't necessarily have the biggest faith that somehow we're going to end up in a utopian society.
No,
I also don't
no.
want that either.
I feel like the best course of action would be like just the abolishment of the no quirks unless you have a license rule.
Yeah, that could be it, because that does lead to a lot of problems. Even Vigilantes honestly explores that a lot more, though. But that would be a huge step forward for sure.
Yeah, and also as well, like if people want to be a hero, it doesn't have to be, because that's the thing that's always bugged me about my hero in general is the fact that okay, so the only way to get a hero's license is to go to a school where if you say like I'll just I want to be a scientist. There's more than one way than going to like a school or a university to become a scientist, or just using my field. Like there's more than one way to be in an accident, going to drama school, going to university.
Yeah, I think the bigger issue though, because like some fields just do need specialty
for
training.
sure.
Like I'm in medicine, for example, and we do need a lot of license for that. But I think the bigger thing is a quirk is like a talent or ability you have that people are just strictly not allowed to use, which therefore kind of stifles people to a large extent. And I think that kind of leads to some other issues. But I mean, we can have a whole discussion about that probably a different
Yeah,
time.
probably
But
when the series actually comes to an end.
yeah, that would be a good time. And also, seems Rex chose this chapter for us to talk about because it was his chapter of the week. So
Fair enough. Fair
that's
enough.
kind of
So,
interesting, Rex. So we'll talk about that near the end. Anyway, so continuing onwards, Andy, according to Victor, apparently, if you keep this up and wholeheartedly admit defeat, the points will transfer to them. So, for those who aren't aware, like they talked about points very recently in the story, where it seems that points can be used for different things with the arc slash the round table. Jews used up like all her remaining points to go talk to the lady on the moon named Luna to get a deal made with her to save Fuko. And in this case, it seems like points can be transferred also if you admit defeat, which my only thing with the point system is number one, it came very late game in the story. And number two, I'm not entirely sure how it works. Do you get points with the quest? Do you get points by battling other negators? Because based on what Victor says here, it almost sounds like that is how it works. So all of the negator battles, do they exchange points over time? I don't know, and I don't think the story is ever actually going to tell us, which kind of
yeah,
bothers me. It seems to be important in terms of like the game system they have. And that's kind of one of my things with Undead Unluck. They'll kind of like say, oh, we have all this cool stuff in the background, but not give me enough satisfying explanation for what is going on.
yeah. I mean, here's the thing. It would have been better if when we first saw Victor and June interacting in the story, uh, if they said something completely vague, like how many points are you gonna get now? Like something completely vague like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
that, or at the very least, if they had on the quest boards, like when they give quests, they could have points with question marks on them so they don't know how many points. And at least the characters would have thought to themselves, points, what's that about? And then we would have known that completing quests and doing other tasks could accumulate points. But I still feel like that's something they should have slowly built up rather than kind of tossing in. And as far as we know, the only utility of the points is using the arc itself. But who knows? The author could later be like, oh, no, you can use your points to, I don't know, stop someone's negator ability or something.
yeah,
So, anyway,
it's
Zangetsu, I agree, it's too vague.
oh, hi, Songetsu. Glad you could make it. So yeah, and we have Victor suggesting if he swaps out, if Andy swaps with him now, then he could deactivate unrepair due to him not being the original target. But he questions if this is Andy's sense of if this is Andy's vision of justice, and it's great enough for the task. And then Andy's like, "Huh, my vision of justice." Um, uh, and Victor explains like, oh, whenever people need to make major decisions, follow the path their visions of justice shows them, and he's basically just parroting what June has always told him. So kind of June rubbing off on him a little bit there, which might explain the couple ship that we got in that color page a few chapters ago.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it was implied that they were a thing at one point, um, which I guess was supposed to add an extra complication to all this. But I don't really feel much for them as a duo, just because we didn't spend too much time with them as a duo. But that's
Yeah,
a separate point. Anyway, so basically, continuing onwards, Victor is just telling that you can deactivate the unrepair if you're not the original target. And I'm glad at least at this point they bring up like why Victor's important, because I predicted last chapter that it's like, okay, and remember talking to One Smart about this, like, okay, like there's no way Rip just won. Victor's gonna come out and just like reverse all this, and they pretty much just tell them that. And I'm kind of glad they brought it up, because even though it's obvious, this is one of those times where it's a good reminder of why that would work. And
yeah,
then, uh, and then more onwards, basically, page 5.
yeah,
Their decision is a simple one. All they want is to save a lone woman by their hands. And therein lies an unwavering vision of justice. Kind of a very basic vision of justice, but sure, I can go for that. And then if you don't have a vision capable of trumping that, you can forget about swapping me out. And then if Andy basically just says, I'm the same as them, which he is, he basically just wants to save Fuko, just like they want to save Lila. So, I mean, it's just kind of drawing the parallels, which I think is fine because that is the interesting part. But
My
what's more
question,
interesting? Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. My question is like, even if Andy saves Fuko and they go into the loop, Fuko's not going to recognize him.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about that actually because I think that's an important thing. Um, so Andy wants to say, I want to see the person who loves laughing and smiling. But in Fuko's case, it's a problem because while Rip is willing to kill off whoever they need to in order to get their happy ending with Lila, and Latia is willing to sacrifice herself, Fuko wants everybody to be part of her happy ending, be it friend or foe, because that's just like the kind of person Fuko is. So Andy's kind of stuck with it's like, well, okay, I need them to be part of the future, but if I let them both go, then they're just not going to help me with my goal. And at this point, and he also brings up then, okay, well, also if we go into another loop, Ragnarok will just happen all over again. So I can't just willingly surrender and just let this all happen. So then Victor points out what I figured was the obvious solution from the beginning, but at the same time, I think it's just fine to just state, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I'm like, I figure this is what we're always going to do. Let Fuko ride the arc and go through the loop. And that I think answers your question, Luke. Fuko would forget everything unless she was the one in the arc. If
Oh,
she's in
okay.
the arc, she'll retain all her memories.
But then, uh, uh and Andy can survive going
Yes,
into
he
the loop?
can because
Oh,
he
okay.
survived every loop effectively.
Okay, but also this is going to lead. This might actually lead into something else where Fuko, if she does go through the loop and she's like, "Hey, Tops," I'm running over to Tops without realizing like he probably doesn't remember her now, and she touches him and causes unluck to happen to him.
Yeah, it could. And I think that's what will happen. And I'm assuming that's what the story's either penultimate or final arc, depending on, I don't know exactly what this author's direction is. But like basically the end game of the story is where Fuko is just going to be reconnecting with all the negators. Now, theoretically, they could spend some time with that and really getting to know the new versions of these characters and everything and building bonds. But what I've learned from this author is they don't really like to take their time with anything. So I
No,
think they're just going to quickly just keep recruiting people, bringing them together, and just get to the final battle.
and
Like, probably,
then it turns out Tops was working for God all along, and it's like,
yeah,
okay, where did this come from?
yeah, it'll be something like that, some weird twist. And yeah, Rex, I do understand Juice is Victor's Fuko. I mean, basically, everyone has like couples like going on in this, and that's like a running theme of this story, doing whatever it takes for the person you love. Not my favorite theme, but it's a theme
Ah, the
that
things you
exists.
do for love.
Yeah, I'm not huge on that. And I think my basic reasoning for that is the whole thing with the things I'll do for love, it just how dramatically it'll change a character. Like you can have a character you really like and enjoy, but then they'll start making extremely irrational decisions for the sake of love, or you'll have a character you don't really like or don't understand, but then they'll start doing some other stuff just because they've fallen in love. So I always felt like love, and maybe this is just from my own personal experience being different than other people's, but I always felt like love was more used as like a plot device to quickly change a character's actions and outlooks. And there's like, yeah, but that's just how love is. And maybe it is, but I find that hard to believe.
Yeah, I could definitely see your point. Yeah.
Yeah, but we should probably get back to
Yeah, we
this.
should. So, Fix is explaining that June's Billy, Rip's group, Gina and Floyd, both of whom they've killed, and the loop's already seen its all fair share of tragedy, and this is why they need the loop to have the two keys to slaying God, undead and unlock. Title drop there, to
Yep.
prevent all the tragedies that have occurred in this loop and rebuild the union. So basically, yeah, like I said, it seems like it's setting up for Fuko and Andy to gather all the Union members together to rebuild the Union in the next loop.
And probably even the members of Under more than likely as well, because they'll know exactly who is going to be a negator by that point, and they can prevent tragedies that would have killed off some of the characters we saw, like Gina and Void, apparently, which we only saw for
Yeah,
like a chapter.
yeah.
Um,
Which would be quite interesting if we actually got Gina back.
yeah, I think we will. Honestly, I think we're gonna get her, and that'll be nice because I always thought that was a character they could have done more with, but I understood why they let her die early on. But this is a good way to bring her back naturally. And then Rex waiting for Andy and Victor to chat. Yep, definitely the same. I would have hoped a chat between them would have been a little more deeper into Victor's story personally, but that's a different conversation for another day. And and Rex, if that works for you, the irrationality of love, that's fine. I mean, I will admit emotions themselves are very irrational. It's
Yeah,
just kind of, I think it just kind of bugs me because I much prefer when characters act rationally and find solutions. That's why I really enjoy intelligent protagonists. But characters making irrational decisions based on the, and like it's also something when it's like, again, it's probably just based on my own experience. It's something when it's like for family and friends, like might be able to get behind that. But when it's just like, oh, I've fallen in love with this character, it's like a whole other qualification that I'm just not as familiar with for all these justifications to make sense to me. But that is just me. Rip takes this love to another level though, and oh yeah, Sean. I forgot about Sean, unseen, the invisible dude.
oh, I was like thinking, like, who's Sean?
Yep, I forgot about him. And yeah,
I,
actually, this would be a good way to bring back characters who didn't get enough chance. But at the same time, I feel like, like I said earlier on, this author doesn't really like to take their time. So I feel like we'll still rush past a bunch of stuff. And some characters will just kind of jump on board and be like, yeah, you're on our side now.
yeah. So, so Victor continues on and says like, "Oh, you can try and convince Rip all you want, but words won't stop him. In order to truly save him, you must stop him right here and now." And he's asking Andy, "Are you prepared to carry the fate of those two, but not just them two, the fate of the entire world on your shoulder?" And Andy's like, "Yeah, I am, and I'll save everyone. And I must become a god of death if I have to." And that satisfies Victor enough to lend him his power as we cut over to Rib and Latia, where he's like, "Oh, I managed to be undead. Thanks for that." And Latia is like, "Oh, did I pull it off?" And Rip's like, "Yeah, you immobilized him. Now I just have to make him declare a points transfer." So yeah, so yeah. From what I can understand, it's like, "I've won. Now give me your points."
Which again, it's never brought up until this point, but whatever. Um,
Whatever.
then he basically thanks Latula, and Rip says, "I'll ride the ark and pick you up." And she says, "Next time we meet, I want to see you without these dangerous things on your body," referring to the prosthetic limbs that Rip's been using.
Oh, don't
And
worry, Tatiana. You're going to see that way sooner than you think.
yep, because right behind we see Andy getting up. And what's really interesting, detail that people pointed out to me when I was discussing the chapter, is that we see some hair falling off him right in the back. And that is Andy like switching from Victor. So basically, he used Victor, switched in to unactivate, unrip, and repair himself completely. And then they switched right back. And it's like
Oh,
a
nice.
tiny detail. And I will say the author is pretty good at incorporating like very show don't tell stuff. Almost maybe too well where I don't notice it, but that's a whole other discussion. So yeah,
Yeah.
good. That's a good one. I'll give them props for that. Anyway, so then Rip realizes what's happening, and then immediately goes into combat mode because he's just like, "Oh, this is bad. I need to like fight him." But as soon as he turns around, Andy's already smashed his arm off, and we just get like the whole like watching Andy like smack him around, breaking all his limbs, and some flashbacks where Rip was actually cutting off his limbs in order to get the prosthetics to begin with, which Latila wasn't a huge fan of doing that. But Rip, of course, did it in order to make himself stronger. And then Andy basically uses his blood to use his killer move again to, I guess, effectively destroy Rip.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm going to be a god of death. So I think we can imply that this is actually a killing move. And I wanted to talk about this because this was the other thing I kind of predicted in some discussions I had. Basically, since we're going for another loop where we'll meet all the characters again, we kind of have free reign to kill off everybody
Yeah.
other than Unlock. And I think the author is going to take full advantage of it just because it's like, oh, there are no consequences now. And I mean, it's fine. And I think it'll make for some good fights. The gravity of which I'll see after the execution. But at the very least, I will say we're going to have some very brutal chapters coming up. And I think
Oh
this
yeah,
is a
for sure.
chapter to start that. But at the same time, I don't feel like the weight of these deaths really hit too much for me because we've known about these loops for a while. So I kind of predicted these
Yeah.
wouldn't be the final versions of the characters anyway.
Yeah, it's like people don't like the whole revealing Dr. Stone, but at least in that sense, they were dead for a while, and it wasn't like an immediate like, oh, it's all undone, and we didn't actually know if like a character like Yoga would be able to come back from basically getting turned into Swiss cheese.
Yeah, there was like some suspense in terms of who would come back, how would come, and like you and me during our discussions, we were discussing the exact criteria that might be involved. But then we learned about what the actual how it worked for the Medusa, and that had all other kinds of implications. So I
Yeah,
think in Doctor Stone it's still done much more expertly, but I don't mind this for Undead Unluck just for the again what the author likes to do, the pure cool factor of okay, my main character is just gonna go around killing everybody now.
yeah. Also, I see what you did there, Rex. Rest in peace, Rip.
Yeah, because his actual name is Rip.
Yeah.
And then I think he also mentioned Gina's a fan favorite character. I will admit, I think Gina gets a little too much love. But I think what I liked about her is she kind of got introduced in the part of the story when the story started to pick up because all of a sudden we had like a really cool fight between negators and figuring out the negation abilities and stuff. So I think Gina was a great first big fight for them. I mean, you could argue Shen was that, but I think Gina's a better example. So I think that's why people like Gina, because otherwise she's just kind of like a random rival that doesn't really matter. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, that was Undead Unluck. I've got nothing else to say on this chapter. So yeah, I guess we can move on to talking about Ayashimon then.
yep, let's do that. And again, for anybody who's still sticking around, feel free to suggest series.
Yeah. So
Um, yeah, so then you got it.
yeah, I've got it. So I guess we were wrong.
Oh, yeah, we were wrong. And honestly, some people did call what happened, and I was telling them, hang on, I don't think that's what happened, but it is what happened.
It
So
is what happened.
I definitely
So
got the wrong prediction, but I'll also talk about some reason why I was hoping it wasn't, because in a weird way, the story kind of addresses it. But yeah, we'll get to
yeah,
it when we get to it.
yeah, we'll get into it. So ba- um, so basically, it starts off with a flashback with glasses guy, and Kyoto, uh, Co-
Kotan.
Koton, that was it. Where he's like, "Oh, you took that way too far. Chairman Koi is against stuff like that. Basically, being a brutal massacre to other people and other Ayashimons. But the glasses guy is like, oh, shut it up. This is what the Emma Syndicate is like now. It's merely a business partner, and I accept no orders from no one but Mr. Galbo Danku. As we cut back to the present when we have Koton going, no mercy, no holds barred. That's the way Tamagawa's always operated. He keeps a low profile since he's got his current position, but that doesn't mean he's bestial nature went away. He's researched everything on his enemies and exploits their weaknesses, and it turns out Maru's weakness is Dopo. So yeah, this kind of confirms my theory about Maru in that he is actually scared of Dopo to an extent.
I mean, yeah, but I think a few chapters ago that was confirmed. So, yep, you were right about that. He did get quite well traumatized by it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think one of the reasons well, actually, no, I can still wait to say on that. I just want to read Rex comments first. Also, want to Spy X Family was really good this week as well. I agree, it was a good Spy X Family chapter. I love the Twilight backstory arc. But we don't usually talk about Spy X Family here. I'm not sure if Luke even read the last chapter.
I skimmed through it because Spy X Family. I'll probably have to get back into it at some point, but really, it was just a lot of people get confused on me. Like, why don't you like the boat arc? Why don't you like the boat arc? The boat arc was fantastic. And okay, I'm gonna lay it all out here. Like, okay, reading that arc bi-weekly to bi-weekly, it was only 14 chapters, but it felt like 50 chapters because of the way it was. Just the pacing of Spy X Family. And to put it in perspective, like, we had that cliffhanger where Yor was facing down all those people, and it's like, oh my god, there's going to be a massive Yor fight, I can't wait. And then we have to wait a month for the fight.
Yeah, so a lot of our enthusiasm for Spy X Family kind of drained. Like, the anime is going on right now, and my good friends are watching it and having a good time. And I've heard it from what I've seen. It looks really good, and with only minimal filler because there's not too much to adapt.
Yeah, I knew that was gonna happen. But also the reason why my enthusiasm has dropped for Spy X Family is because people are treating it like it's the God saving grace. This is the best thing ever. Nothing can compare to it. And I'm just like, have you seen Slice of Life series?
I'll be honest, I don't know too many slice of life series. It's not really my genre of choice.
That's
I need to get
that's
more into it.
that's fair. That's fair. But it's like people are just like, like I said, praise it when it's like we've had Slice of Life series before.
Yeah, and I do think it's a little bit overhyped, but at some point I'll probably try the anime and Luke might get back on the manga. I don't remember exactly where you stopped, but I will say at least the last few chapters were really good.
It was during the boat arc.
Yeah.
And also as
So
well, my main issue of Spy X Family is that the title is Spy X Family, but we hardly see the family being a family, if that makes sense.
oh yeah, I guess when you put it that way, that's kind of true.
Yeah, because I mean, in that boat arc, I mean, yeah, Yor had her own thing to do, but at the same time, she could have come across Anya and Lloyd and be like, "Oh, hey, you guys are here as well. Why don't you come and talk? Why don't you come and talk with these people that I'm talking about?" And Anya could have had some good interactions with that baby.
Well, maybe, but it was also a very dangerous thing for them to get involved in.
Fair enough, fair enough. But at the same time, yeah, I really, yeah, people praising it, but it's like you don't really see the family all that much, which is why I like Mission Yosakura Family a lot more, because you see the family interactions a lot more.
And yeah, Rex, I will also kind of agree. The school stuff's not the most interesting either. But at the same time, weirdly, Anya's school stuff makes some more plot progress than a lot of the other characters' stories. Because like Lloyd will go on random missions for stuff, and Yor will do the same just for their own characters, which is fine. But at the same time, it's like there's so little story progress made with because
Yeah,
of them. And
that's a
Anya's school chapters are at least, hey, maybe we'll at least get more between her and Damien, which might lead to something.
yeah, and that's a big problem as well. When because it's trying to be two things at once.
Yep, but we should probably move off of
Yeah,
Spy X Family.
yeah, let's
Get
move
back.
on. Get back to I get back
Yeah,
to Ayashimon. So basically, the general idea is that was it Tamagawa basically, because he's a
turned
Tanuki,
into Nobo.
it, it, uh, because he's a Tanuki, he can shapeshift into Dopa. So yeah, it's not the real Dopa that that Maru's fighting here, and Ten's questioning like how does he know about Big Brother's grudge already, and Ko- Ko- Koya addresses
Kotan.
like Kotan, sorry, sorry,
It's
addresses
basically cotton. That's how I remember it.
addresses it by, oh, that security of it is probably the reason why it is. Tricking guards, nosing around, that's easier than taking candy from a baby, and they've got one hell of an information network throughout Kabukicho. Given that dope hasn't exactly been quiet, so they're gonna find out what everything is, and the info would be on Taragawa's desk in 5 minutes flat. And we have Uru saying like, "Okay, Maru, you just have to stay calm. It's just a transformation. He isn't the real Dopo." But Colton is like, "Oh, I wouldn't say that actually." And it turns out that not only can Karagawa to transform it into Dopo, he can actually use Dopo's abilities, which
Yeah,
which I thought was pretty interesting because it was something I was not expecting.
neither was I, and I will admit that and what it leads to were pretty good twists on the idea, which I wasn't again 100% sold on, but I'll get to that in a second. So basically, he uses Dopo's icy fire that we were talking about with my hero, and then Ten says, "Oh man, this is bad." He's basically invincible, and so Tamagawa is basically strategizing here, saying, "Okay, freezing is better than destroying them because he doesn't want to damage his hotel, obviously." So he wants to dig into the trauma by using his transformation and end it quickly because he can't hold on to the transformation for long. And then immediately we see Maru's face smile, and this was kind of where I was getting to my point. When people predicted, it's like, oh, this isn't Dopo. It's just Tamagawa transforming into Dopo. My thought was, okay, like the only reason I would see him doing that rather than using actual Dopo would be because he wants to dig into his trauma, like he's saying here. But that seemed like a dumb idea because if you transform in front of somebody in front of their face, you know it's not them. It's not like he doesn't have object permanence. He knows it's not Dopo. But
Yeah,
at the same time, I guess the story could have gotten away with it if it wanted by saying it's like the trauma so deep seated that even fighting someone that looks like Dopo and has his ability and fights like a Dopo is enough for Mar to be thrown off. But luckily, the story decided to go in my direction, saying, yeah, no, this trauma strategy was a bad idea.
yeah, yeah. But also something else that I was not expecting is a swear in a Shonen Jump series.
Oh, does he swear here?
Yeah. If you go on, because you have Maru going like, "Oh, this is getting me all pumped up. Now I'm all pumped up. I can show you the new super me," and you see it on page 7.
Oh, that, yeah. Next page, got it. And yeah, so Maru is ready to basically use his training against fake Dopo here. And the other thing I want to say is, I feel the other reason I thought this strategy was dumb is like, even if you want to use a fake Dopo to dig into trauma, why not use one of his subordinates, who is also a Tanuki, to transform into Dopo?
Yeah,
Because then it's like, okay,
he's
but then he
fighting two
doesn't know
Dopos.
it's a fake Dopo, so therefore he would think, oh man, this might be the real Dopo. Because I feel like that would have at least been a more effective strategy at digging into the trauma. That was the other reason I didn't like this particular
Fair
time.
enough. Fair enough.
But
Um,
it might just be his subordinates aren't as skilled as him in transformation. That could be the reasoning. But anyway,
yeah,
yeah, like you said, fake Dopo is swearing here. I know it's Tamagawa, but sometimes I'll just call him fake Dopo because reasons we'll get to. Anyway, so then Maru is like thinking back on his training where he basically learned to punch the concept of fire.
yeah, yeah.
For those who weren't keeping up with the series, that's what he's learned.
I still don't know how that works. Like, how do you punch? I'm trying. It's like trying to punch air. It's like, how do you punch air?
Yeah, well, I mean, air actually makes more sense because you can punch air; it just doesn't do anything for the air
Okay,
to move it.
but yeah,
But
yeah,
I think with the idea here is that Ayashimon are conceptual beings. And so therefore he has to learn to punch concepts to deal any real damage to them, not just their physical forms, which makes sense. But I think the rest of it is all just a bunch of magic-y, kai, chakra stuff that is just incorporated into the story. It's spiritual stuff that we're just going to be like, all right, cool. You can do that now. And so
Okay.
then Maru is gearing up to do the same thing he did in that building where he saved a kid. And yeah, we just start seeing him punching fire back and forth. And I guess it's supposed to look pretty cool, but I don't know. For me, this next set of panels didn't look, I think, as awesome as they wanted, but it was nice to see at least Maru using the technique he's learned.
Yeah, not even just punching, he's kicking as well.
Zengetsu, I'm not sure what Foxfire means. It sounds familiar though. Like
Foxfire. It's not meant to be a reference to Renamon from Digimon. Oh no! I think I know what you mean. Or is it meant to be a reference to Garurumon from Digimon, because his in the Japanese his attack is Foxfire.
Okay. Yeah, I watched the dub, so I wouldn't know that. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Cool. So yeah, if that's what you meant, let us know, because I kind of missed that. Anyway, so then we have oh wait, I know her name. She's her name is like another the girl. Wait, hang on, I'm just gonna look this up real quick.
While you're doing that, I'll continue on. So yeah, the girl with Tawagawa is
Inari. I got it.
Pardon?
Inari. Her name is Inari. Yeah, Inari just like, what's going on? What's this? And then Big Ten is like, Big Sis, what's happening? And then she basically just like, yeah, he's just punching fire right now. It's kind of crazy. And even fake Dopo is just like,
yeah, this is gonna plan out on the way I did.
Yep. It's hilarious. This chapter is really fun. And then he just punches him in the face after that. Oh man. And then Mara is of course excited because of all his training actually paid off. And Tamagawa is very freaked out by this. And then it got Inari is saying, okay, you need to change back like immediately. So at first you think, oh, there's probably like a time limit for how long he could stay changed, but it's more like he shouldn't stay transformed.
Yeah, because it turns out that the longer to cut it all down to the simplest terms, the longer he stays transformed as the particular form, the closer it is to him actually assuming that form, in the sense that he would not be able to change back. So, like, the more he stays as Dopo, the closer it is to him actually becoming a clone of Dopo.
Yeah, which is an interesting weakness for transformations. It's basically the old, like, don't make that face or you get stuck like that, except in full physical form. And then Kinemon, but that works too. Which Digimon is Kinemon?
Kinemon.
Yeah, just look that up. I'll keep.
Let me just quickly look that up. Kinemon.
So we see Tamagawa having a flashback because he's like, "Man, I'm gonna get stuck as Dopo if I keep this up any longer." And
he's not talking about Digimon. He's talking about Kinemon, who's a character from One Piece, whose name is Foxfire Kinemon.
Okay. Does his fire power have something to do with this?
Let me go back and look at his abilities. Let me just.
So continuing onwards, Tamagawa is thinking about the.
What it is that he can actually cut fire.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool. That makes sense then.
Yeah.
All right. So thanks, Zangetsu. Red Scabbards. I think that.
Yeah, that's referring to the group that he's a part. That's referring to the group he's a part of in One Piece.
Nice. Yep. Just so you know, I've really dug into One Piece. I watched, I think, up to the Arlong arc when I was a kid, but then I didn't continue after that.
Okay.
So then going back to the story, so Dopo or Tamagawa is thinking about how the Tanuki established the hotel as a safe place for them, because again, all the Ayashimon are trying to find places where they can continue to survive and thrive. And I guess their strategy was, okay, again, we're going to rely on money. And the way we're going to make money is by making a fancy hotel system. So it's kind of like a nice glimpse into that. And then basically, Tamagawa's like, you can trust me, to his boss. I swear I won't allow anyone to take their home. And then he literally starts pulling out the mask, and Inari's trying to talk him out of it, but it's kind of too late. Fake Dopo pulls out his mask, and he's powering up. And what's interesting here, I've only seen a little bit of their review. I need to get back to it. But Project Manga was talking about how this is a very interesting reveal, because normally a major antagonist, like we usually have higher forms we don't see till later in the fight, but for the first time we're actually seeing a higher form of this character's fight through like a fake version of that character, which is probably a unique way to go about that, for Maru to see this is what Dopo is like at full power, or what his transformation is before actually fighting him again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is very cool, and also what Dopo's power up looks like. That is very freaky.
Oh yeah, like there's a lot of dialogue here about uh, the concept I have Ayashimon made flesh. But yeah, I think I saw on my Twitter profile, someone's like, why aren't we talking about how cool this panel is? And yeah, this is a very cool panel on page 18 of the fake Dopos, which I guess is also probably real Dopos final form.
Yeah, it is because Big Sis says like, oh, he can even replicate the mask. So yeah, this is his final. This is Dopo's final form.
Yep. I also do want to point out, though, that we don't necessarily know if just because they can use the same abilities, if he's necessarily as strong as like the real Dopo. Because for one thing, obviously he's still using techniques of Dopo, but Dopo's used those techniques for his whole life, so he probably can use them better.
Well,
For
I
one thing.
think this might actually be Dopo at full power because he does say like he does say on the last page, I'm that which extinguishes light in the darkness. I am deep manifesto. If you think you can overcome your fear of me, I'll just have to rekindle it once again. I'll make you shake in terror at the name of Dopo Akari, my name. So yeah, I feel like this is Dopo at full power.
Well, I mean, my only way of saying is number one, it's kind of a pretty broken ability if we're already facing Dopo at full power right now. Because again, that goes back to our theory of, oh, this is probably going to be the end. But
Yeah,
if it's like a weaker, like let's just say it's like a tenth or a fifth of his full power, then like it still allows a bigger threat to be down the line. So that's why I'm still
maybe.
going to say that if the
Although
series,
my question is that if Maro takes out Taragawa here, since it's pretty much that he's become Dopo, if he kills if he takes out this Dopo, does it take out the real Dopo? Kind of like if you destroy the clone you destroyed, kind of it. So they're like, are they linked in some way because of this transformation? It's like if one
interesting
dies, the
idea.
other dies.
And here's the thing, I think in general, no, the answer is they aren't connected. But I feel like, let's just say the author wants, is it going to get axed, and they know it's going to happen, they could actually use that idea for them to take out this form of Dopo, have it connect, take out the actual Dopo, cause a huge, power shift dynamic, and just do a final arc, basically, from there.
Yeah.
So that's actually not a bad idea if the series is going to get axed, like how they can do it from here. But if it's not getting axed, I'm going to say no. And it's just like,
Okay.
oh, this was your training before you fight the real Dopo, like your practice fight, as Maru says.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Yeah, I can see it going either one of two ways because at this point, I have no idea if it's going to, like with Durandro, and I have no idea what's going to happen with both these series.
Yep, we're still kind of in that limbo because Jump has a lot of veterans that are about to end, but it's also going to get some newer series too. So who knows? And these sales
Yeah.
aren't super great either. But that was Ayashimon. Zengetsu, if you're still around, or anyone else who happens to be in chat, feel free to suggest any other series that you might want to talk about. I think a pretty quick one we could do. Um, is Akane.
Oh yeah, for sure. Let's do a Akane. Let's get the A's out of the way.
Yeah, effectively. I just have them listed alphabetically right now on my device. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, which is a shame that we don't have the Trinity of A's here because Ayakashi is on break.
yep. But I guess that also works out for us because we won't have the time to talk about
Yeah,
everything.
definitely. Oh, but one thing I've got to say, the next color page, like I said last week, the next color page has to be Suzu herself because we had Shonen, we had Chibi Suzu, and now we have to have regular Suzu.
Yep. They need the triangle. Okay,
So
so yeah, I don't know what's going on in the first page, like what she's saying or what that means.
I
So
think it's,
continue.
I think. Oh no, I know what it is. I know what it is. It says it. What? Where is it? Where is it? Yeah, it's the story that they wanted to do at the at
Oh
the
yeah, you're right.
yeah.
You're right. I see
I
it.
was like looking at that, like, wait a minute, I know this. I know where this is now.
Good memory.
Um, so yeah, it turns out that the competition that Akane is going to be entering, it's in its 20th anniversary, and it's known as the Karaku Cup, and it's explained that traditionally through an interview with Iso, as he's having an interview right now, it's saying like traditionally the field was limited to college or full course students 18 or older, but at his request the limitations were relaxed to allow for high school students to take part as well, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah,
Why he would do something like that?
yeah, and we'll talk about that because I think there's something very interesting going on in this story. But that's for a little bit down the interview. So basically, continuing onwards, he said, "My position, I don't have the chance to observe amateurs, especially young ones." And what's interesting, so one of the anime I'm watching this season called Healer Girl, which is probably one of the few slice of life series I'm watching this season. It's very interesting because it's like a story about like healthcare, but like healthcare from the perspective of a world where healing is possible through song. So it's kind of
Okay,
mixed like traditional like medicine with this type of medicine.
okay,
Anyway, so but it for the most part, it's like involves like high school girls at the center of it because of course it does, and they were doing a school festival because of course they do, and in that school festival they had a Rakugo club doing something there, and I'm like, I know what that is now.
yeah. Also,
I'm thinking what he means
also,
by amateurs. Yeah, I just want to say what they think they mean
okay,
by amateurs here are those high school clubs. Go ahead.
okay. Also, as well, did you see the links I sent from the YouTube Rocker Goes?
Oh yeah, I think you sent those a while back. No, I haven't
Yeah,
checked them out yet.
yeah.
But yeah.
The Canadian one, I actually tweeted like, "Hey, have you heard about this series about Rocker Go?" He never got
Oh,
back to me. He never got back to me.
I mean, that's fine. They probably don't get back to like everyone
Pro-
who tweets at them.
yeah, probably not. But it was quite interesting that I found like, "Hey, there's a Canadian Rocker Go." Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
so
continuing
yeah,
on, they've
continuing on. What I'm most fascinating about this is that we're seeing Iso in a different light here, in a much more cheerier light to what he was perceived in the first chapter.
yeah, but at the same time, let's also keep in mind this is a public face, as it were, and he's on TV. So, it's kind of like, do you really know the person behind the camera
Yeah,
kind of thing. I
yeah,
mean,
but
in
it's
his defense, he does say it's like people assume I would be more frightening, he says on page 4.
yeah,
Because
that's
he's like, I'm in the business of making people laugh, so relax. So I'm like, okay, that is true, but also I don't trust this guy.
yeah. But at the same time, it is nice that we're okay. Yeah, he's not like how he was in the first chapter all the time. So it's nice to see him with like an actual smile on his face.
True, but I think it's also a front.
Yeah,
At least that's my opinion. But
yeah,
continuing onward, I find interesting is the next page after. So after they're like saying, "Why'd you ask to be the judge of this competition? It's the 20th anniversary, but also I want to show the younger generation the splendor of Rakugo. The most young people nowadays have never seen Rakugo. This is a grave situation in my mind. So the reporter's like, you have an interest in promoting it among young people? He's like, yeah, of course. Think about it. What future is there for performing arts that fails to draw in new enthusiasts? In today's world, there's an overwhelming abundance of entertainment options. We got to do what we can to ensure Rakugo's cultural flame doesn't burn out.
And
And
that is
I think,
true.
yep, that is true. And I think we don't know a lot about this guy at this point because we're still like 13 chapters in.
Yeah.
So there's time to learn more. But if this is part of his main motivation, it's actually a really, really good motivation because there is something to be said about like nowadays we have everything from streaming services to movies to television, technically still on, to social media, and even apps like TikTok where people can get all kinds of stuff, and not to mention music. So Rakugo's and being an older art form, more in the theater side of things, like that's going to slowly die out if people in the younger generation don't start taking interest. And in a weird way, as someone pointed out, the manga of this series is in doing the same thing, and it reminds me of a sports anime I watched for one season, which was kind of average to be honest. But what I liked about it, it was a sports anime about a sport called kabaddi. And for those who don't know, that's a sport that kind of originated in India, my own home country. And I didn't think most people knew about it. But part of the story was that, yeah, a lot of people don't know about our sport, but that could change. That the character motivation is to get big in the world and make it a bigger sport. And I thought, oh, that's interesting because that's also kind of what the anime is just trying to
Okay.
do.
What is
I
that?
do like that.
What is that sport like?
Kabaddi, it's kind of like the closest analogous sport is probably like rugby or American football because it's a full contact sport basically with like no real equipment other than using your own body. Because basically it's like territory. It's like you divided where two teams have two territories they're defending, and one team will always send out somebody to go invade the other's territory to take players out. But the catch is that the invader has to say kabaddi continuously while doing that. So you're
That
kind of,
sounds that sounds like fun.
yeah, and it's like such a niche sport. I played it a little when I was a kid, obviously not professionally, but it was like my family. But it was like so great to actually see an anime about it because it's from Japan, obviously, but that means there's a presence in other countries. So
Yeah.
yeah, check out Kabaddi anime if you wanted to learn anything
I
about that. Probably is
I
better
will
than
definitely check that out because that sounds it sounds like a professional version of Capture the Flag, if that makes sense.
kind of, except there's no flag. It's
Except
more
there's no
like it's like dodgeball because it's like you get players out and you can get players back in, but there's no ball. You're using your own physical body.
Okay. Yep.
So that's why
That's
I say
all.
dodgeball plus rugby is the best way I can explain it.
Okay. I will definitely have to check it out. Let me just get it up. Cabo.
I can send it to you. You can.
Okay. Yeah. Send it to me, and then I'll check it out later. But yeah, continuing on. Continue on. Iso says that he'd like to ask the younger folks what they think of today's Rakugo business, and do you think I could have some time to speak with the winner? And the interviewee is like, "Oh, really? You do that?" He's like, "Yeah, of course." So as an added bonus, the winner will get to have a conversation with me, and pretty much like you said, where we've got where overabundance of entertainment, this interview is being watched on a mobile phone or a cell phone.
Yep, it's actually a good point. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. So, who was the name of this guy? Trying to remember.
I think it's something like Gaku.
Oh yeah, that was it. It was Gaku. Yeah, I was just trying to remember what his name was. So yeah, Gaku is watching the interview and he sees Akane and he's like, "Oh, you're here to see Master to get permission to enter the event." And it's like, "Yeah, isn't that exactly what I said?" And I love how we were talking about Ayashimon right before the chat with Tanuki, and she's wearing a Tanuki top.
Oh, that is true. I don't
Yeah,
know if that's a coincidence or not, because I mean these mangaka do read each other's
maybe,
stuff.
maybe it is a reference. Who knows? Um, but yeah, Gaku mentions like, oh, because the Karaku Cup is an event for amateurs, and since you're not an official member until next spring, you're still eligible to take part. But the master wants to train you in a proper Rakugo as soon as possible, and that's why he's allowed you to work with Kojo and the others. Okay, so yeah, there was a reason why she's being put under the tutelage of the other apprentices of the master. So I'm glad that we got like why that was, and why we had all those chapters prior of her learning from Kojo, and soon to be learning from another one of the apprentices.
Yeah, which is what I expected the next arc to be, which is why I still think like the last two chapters could have been one, but it's not a big deal. I talked about it last time for anybody who's interested.
Yeah,
But yeah, basically every arc it seems like we're going to learn from somebody new, and I think after this one we're going to get a tournament arc. It looks like.
yeah. Um, so we have Goku saying like, so asking to participate in this competition is like claiming I'm not a pro, I'm just an amateur, and if you ask me, that's dishonest thing to do. But he understands why what she's feeling, and but questions if it's worth turning her back on the masters completing the event, because he knows that she just wants to talk to Iso, and it's basically the reason why is like he wants to ask him why he kicked her dad out of the school. But based on what he says in the beginning of the chapter, I think this is kind of the reason. It's like he did not see the father as being someone who could bring the younger generation into the field.
Probably. Except then the question is why? Because let's face it, we read the first chapter and it brought us in.
Yeah,
So I wonder why specifically he was thinking that.
yeah.
But the other
I
thing
think
people should
um,
remember is sorry, I just
what,
want to say this real quick.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, we did see from Akane's last performance. I mean, not at the retirement home, but before that, uh, one of his apprentices, Ishio's apprentices, and he also expressed the same idea of the next generation of Rakugo.
yeah. So my theory might be that Iso didn't know that the father was a father. Like um, all the other contestants might have been single people without kids who look up to them. So he probably assumed that it was all of them, and he probably didn't know about Akane being like the daughter of a Rakugo person who looked up to him.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not, but at the same time, I don't know if that's necessarily qualifications to kick somebody out. But because,
And
like, at this point, it almost seems like the reason is just for a publicity stunt, but there
maybe,
might be more to it, specifically
maybe,
with the dad. Because
but
he said specifically what you saw there wasn't Rakugo. So I wonder what he meant by it.
yeah, I wonder what he meant by that as well. But I think, but again, I think like it's like he probably was in that mindset. Like if these people don't have family of their own, especially younger generation who they can look up to, what chance they got of getting people outside the family? I think that's
Yep.
probably what was going through his mind. But at the same time, like I said, yeah, we have to know like why he said it wasn't Rokugo.
Yep. And I'm hoping there's a good reason. Because that would make him a much more, because right now this chapter did a good job of making me think, okay, there's actually something behind his philosophy. But what is that? How does that connect back to what he did to Akane's dad and those other guys? So
Yeah,
once if that bridge can be gapped really well, where it's like, oh, so that's the reason, then we might have a sense where it's like, you know what, I actually kind of see where the villain is coming from, even if I don't like him or what he did.
yeah, I agree with that. And also something else that's quite interesting here on page 12 is that they basically do the bonkai thing here, because if you remember, Byakuya in Bleach said in order to master Bonkai, it would take 10 years, but Ichigo learned it in 3 days, and it's pretty much the same thing here.
Oh yeah,
So
that
like basically what it is that for those of you who want the context, is that they explain that in other organizations it takes over a decade to reach the rank of Shinichi, which in all honesty, I think that's a reference to the fact that, oh, it takes 10 years to become an overnight sensation. I think that's what they're going for there with that. But in the school that Akane is attending, they could basically be promoted as long as they meet the requirements, that regardless of how long they've been around. So it makes me wonder what the requirements are actually.
yeah, that is another thing we need to learn because that might be something connected to all this.
Yeah, because she does mention there's no guarantee I'll meet those requirements whilst that man is still working. So yeah, what are these requirements?
Hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So we call over to the master, who's like, oh, and Akane again, one of Akane's funny moments here, where she's like, "Oh, I'll have to convince so no matter what, I have to convince the master of what I want to do here." But he's like, "Yeah, sure, you can enter it," and she's like, what?"
yeah, I do like the comedy in this series. It's very well done. Additionally, I will say um, I kind of understand what they mean by a professional level. Like she's trained to be a pro and playing as an amateur is almost a little disrespectful for what she wants to do. But at the same time, I'm not sure if that's completely fair because like she's not because she even amateurs can go on to become professionals, you know? So I
Yeah,
don't know if I completely agree with everything even Gaku said, even
yeah.
though I appreciate the sentiment of what he said. Because you're not born a professional. And even if you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to become a professional someday, well, you start out as an amateur.
Oh yeah, definitely. Not just in like Rakugo or anything, but in general, anything you start off as an amateur. Uh,
Right, exactly.
yeah. Um, so uh, so the master goes on and says like, oh, Masaki said the same thing. There's no point in trying to stop. So basically, he was like, yeah, I knew you were going to ask me this, and there's no point in trying to stop you because it's you, Akane." She's pretty stubborn. Like once she has an idea, she's going to go through with it no matter what. But he does have one exchange for getting her into the cup, and that is the actual story that she actually has to present, which is called Jujemu, which is a story about a parent who gives their child an extremely long name that gets repeated often, and it's all about how many laughs you can squeeze out of repeating the same phrase. Now, this I actually did like because it reminds me of a um, of a sitcom, Faulty Towers, from the UK, which was basically set in this really poorly run hotel, and the waiter in there was a waiter from Spain who didn't know a lot of English, and the repeated phrase there was "I am from Barcelona," and it got funnier with every repetition.
That sounds very familiar. I feel like I've seen that.
Because in the last episode he has a rat. He has a pet rat in the last episode, and it's called Basil, as it because it's named after the main character, but they say it as like the herb, as in basil, the herb, or basil, and they're like. The chef calls the ratatouille basil because he puts quite a lot of basil in it, and he's like, he put basil in the ratatouille, and then he runs off, and then the wife of the main character goes, "He's from Barcelona."
Ah, okay, I got it.
Yeah. So that's what it reminded me of, and I was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe they went there." That just immediately came to me.
Yep. And saying Zangetsu says every little bit helps. I don't get the whole professional thing because she's not yet. And yeah, Zangetsu, I think that's the story is trying to say is she's training. She basically has like the setup to go professional, and she's getting trained by professionals. So the only reason she's not a professional at this point is just because she is a minor in high school, which is
Yeah.
fair. And so as someone who has been getting professional training to go pro, it almost seems I guess disingenuous and to say it's like, oh, I'm just entering as an amateur. But I feel like in some ways that's kind of insulting to amateurs to some extent, because some people, again, like I was saying, they're just starting out as amateurs because they want to go professional, but they need to start here and go up. I mean, you don't
I'm not-
again become like a professional. Like I'm reading a manga about comedians drawn by the guy who drew Death Note, and those guys are amateurs, but a lot of them are saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go in the professional world someday." But of course, they're starting out as amateurs, entering amateur competitions because that's how you build a name for yourself.
yeah, yeah, definitely. But also as well, that might actually get brought up because since Izo's apprentice was there at the last Rakugo that she was in, he might actually see her and say to Izo like, "Hey, she's being trained by pros already."
Could be. Hopefully, that doesn't get her in trouble. But yeah, I'm very interested when we get to the tournament arc because my idea is that we're going to get to meet some rivals,
Yeah,
like proper rivals, not just like that the professional dude we met already and the
yeah,
student, because they're technically above her in some extent, so they aren't really like at her level. But the amateurs, of course, will be a bit below. But I think they'll be closer to Akane. So yeah, it's just me. I'm looking forward to that, and maybe we'll see some more female Rakugoka because we haven't actually seen that many when you think
I
about it.
know. Like we only have Akane, and that's it, pretty much.
Yeah, to be fair, we only just started, but I think I remember the dad's graduating class, if you want to call it that. I think they were all dudes, if I remember.
Yeah, they were all
Not to say there
dudes.
aren't female Rakugoka, because like Luke sent me, I believe, some female Rakugoka.
Yeah. There's a female Rakugo in Japan who can speak English, which is nice.
Yeah, so there are other women in the field, so hopefully we'll see some in the amateur competition
Yeah,
as well. Anyway,
yeah,
so then interestingly, they just go with the metaphor of he might as well be saying, go out there and win with your straight alone, which is referring to like a straight punch. And then he's like, hey, you don't think you can win? And she's like, I can do it. I'll win this event by performing Jug Imu. Um, so then he's like, oh, you better get practicing. And she thanks him and immediately walks off while Shigumo, I think that's his name, says, you know, this isn't your style. Good grief, you were always a daredevil. I don't really know what he's saying right here, but
I think
I think,
I think he's more referring. I think he's referring to. I think he is referring to He's sort of being like, "Oh, it's not your style to actually be a judge or something."
oh, yeah, it could be. There might be more to it because obviously they have history that we don't know about yet. So there might just be also like
They might be
foreshadowing.
brother. They might be brothers for all we know.
It's hard to say because everyone's stage names are all the same because they come from the same school of Rakugo.
Yeah,
Anyway, continuing onwards. Um, so then Gaku is super surprised that she got permission. But what I like in the next panel is literally Akane is apologizing for kind of snapping, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm actually glad she's being polite to him because she was kind of really rude the first time they met. Just
yeah,
like a little bit of character growth on her part. She's actually treating her senpai like with respect.
yeah.
So good for her.
Yeah, but he goes on and says, "Oh, doing Jujemu is a tough request. It's a really famous story. Even people who don't know a thing about Rakugo have heard of Jujemu. If everyone knows it, then you don't know. Then you don't get the laughs from the novelty of it. That's why you rarely see people performing it, even at ordinary events. So, basically, such well known story that people have pretty much gotten sick of it, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think part of the joke is that the surprise of like what the joke is, saying the name over and over. So if you already know what the joke is, it's not going to be as funny. I think the lesson here will be all about execution.
Yeah,
And I
definitely.
think that's a fair lesson for, again, I think his name is Shigumo to give Akane, because the as an amateur competition, she more than likely, I can't say for sure because we don't know the other competitors yet, but she more than likely has the best training. And with training, like she can really focus on the execution of the joke and what she's learned about proper delivery of um, Rakugo. And I think that is what will be the focus, because she'll see it's like, oh man, my level is kind of above these other guys because of all the training I've had and training she's going to get, as we learn in the next page.
Yeah, from the Shiguma school's best Teroku how do you pronounce that word?
Terakoya, I think.
Terakoya, who's a master of old literary teachings, um, and it's Kaguma Ani-san, and
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Ani-san means older brother, which I think is kind of nice because again, everyone's stage names are like based on like the same last name, so it's like they all are one family. So that's kind of a nice
yeah,
touch.
that's kind of a nice touch. Yeah, and you just see him in the library, and he's like, "Oh, I just felt a chill." Like whenever somebody is talking about you, it's like, "Oh, I have no idea why I shook then."
Yep. So how long does she have till the tournament? Did they say?
It doesn't say. It just. I don't think it's set. No, it doesn't say. So I don't think she has long. I would say about maybe 2 weeks at tops.
Yeah, it's kind of what I was thinking, but I just wanted confirmation if they had it. But I think you're right. I don't really see like when the competition will be there. Just that it's the 20th anniversary or whatever. Okay, I'll just check the last chapter to see if they said anything. But I think that's it with the Akane. Next time um, we're getting the other pupil or senpai, whatever you want to say, doing training, and we'll learn more about that guy, how they got into Rakugo, and what new skills Akane can pick up that she'll use in the tournament to score the win and get to talk face to face with Ishio. Of course, I would love it if the the conversation is actually like on camera, like this, either the competition or the one-on-one conversation. Because if that's the case, she can literally be on camera and be like, "Hey, this is my name, and you kicked off my father. I demand an explanation." And literally, social media will blow up because
Yeah.
of this. Because it's like, "Oh my God, the prodigal daughter has returned" or something. Because that
Yes.
would like be, because that could set up a whole thing where, Kane is not a professional yet, but she might actually get some fame out of this just for an encounter with Ishia, which could feed into another arc, dealing with notoriety, as it were.
Yeah, could be. But yeah, that was a Carney. Now, here's the thing. Like, uh, you said you could only do 2.5 hours, and we're kind of. So, do you want to just skip Dora Dora this week and talk about Witch Watch and Mission Yozakura family?
We can save on Dora and Doran for a bit and see if we have time. If we don't, you can always, of course, just talk about your thoughts if
I will.
you
I'll
feel
just
more.
say my thoughts briefly on it because I really don't have much thoughts on it. It's that it was a good It was a good chapter, but nothing really stood out to me personally.
My big thing I want to say with this chapter, I mean, the first stuff is just Dora, and I guess you can bring it up, just the
Yeah,
picture. So, yeah, for chapter 22 of this, basically we see Dora and now Tora effectively like doing a new mission. Apparently, in this mission, they notice some people have been dying real quick, and they're trying to figure out who's been killing them off, as probably, and see if it's a Mononoke, which it probably is. And then they come up with the plan for, okay, if we just patrol the most likely areas, then Naotora will just sense where the Mononoke is. But as we learned, this Mononoke is the same Mononoke that was summoned last chapter named Dosan, and apparently Dosan knew Kusanagi. And then he reaches out to Kusanagi telepathically, apparently. Yokai magnetic waves, apparently is what's called. And they have a communication saying, "Oh, Kusanagi, come help me. I'm in trouble." And then Kusanagi, it seems that based on the exchange, that there's a reason Kusanagi doesn't fully trust Dosan. But Dosan ends up building sympathy points with him and gets Kusanagi to come find him. And then we also learn in this chapter what happened between them in the past. And apparently, Dosan tricked Kusanagi and a friend of his to get food for him, but then eventually ate that friend and almost ate Kusanagi. So
Yeah,
my
so
thing with this chapter is, number one, why is Kusanagi being this gullible and naive? And two, other people have suggested that maybe Kusanagi did tell Dora, because there was a bit of a flashback where Dora was like saying how they're friends and need to be teammates and whatever. So he might have let Dora know before he left. So he may have not been an idiot.
maybe,
But
but
yeah, it looks like we're digging into Kusanagi's backstory. I think that's why that chapter is interesting. But I think the backstory in and of itself, nothing too novel, except we got to see a glimpse into the
the
Mononoke.
Mononoke world, yeah.
Yeah, so I think those are my quick words on Duran Duran.
Yeah, pretty much the same as me. Pretty much the same as me. I mean, might get more interesting when we where when we actually find out more about this Mononoke.
Yeah. And so I think that's about it. I'm assuming next chapter we'll just Kusanagi will talk with Dosan, and Dosan will again trick Kusanagi into something, but then eventually he'll get saved. So that's basically how this works out. But I'm pretty sure Dosan's going to be the Mononoke behind all this. Kusanagi is going to learn who his real friends are, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah. So probably not going to be the most interesting arc, but at least we're digging into Kusanagi's backstory at last.
yeah, yeah. So, guess we've only got now Witch Watch or Mission Yosako family. So, which one do you want to talk about?
I got Witch Watch up.
Oh, okay, we'll do Witch Watch. Yeah. So, starting off with Besco Nemu.
Yep, we get a first page colored. Nemu just walking in,
Yeah,
but not living in the house yet.
not living in the house yet. Like Nemu, just get in that house already. Get in the house,
Yep.
Nemu.
And Moy is bringing down a note he found. Apparently, a letter Nico gave him when they were kids, and he has like properly taped up and preserved. And it says, "Dear Moy, I will be your friend forever and ever." And apparently, it's from like 5 years ago, and it really cheered up Moy, and he's kept it up in his room for a while.
Yeah, you don't look the most cheeriest person at times, Moe. So that so that might be a bit of question mark. Some people like, really, considering your stoic personality.
Yeah, but that comes from his training, so they kind of do
Yeah,
go into. And then I
yeah,
love the color page that we get right here. Like Shinohara just draws like some of the best color pages
yeah.
right now in Jump, just because I love the just use of colors.
But
Because I feel like
again,
most color pages are either like really boring because they don't use the characters well enough, or the colors themselves are not super appealing. But this is just perfect.
yeah, but with this color page, like you couldn't have Nemu's cat form in between Mario and Kon on the bench there.
Oh yeah, between Mahira and Keiko. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean
Keigo
there is
lock
a
on.
spot. Hey, you know what? Knowing him, he left that spot open specifically because he's like, listen, at some point she'll be here.
She'll be here. Well, she's here now because she's staying in the house when all
Yeah,
this is going on.
yeah. And so Nico looks at the letter and she remembers Moy gathering the pieces of the letter and taping it back up, which of course begs the question of why was it torn up to begin with. So that's a nice mystery to start out. And then continuing onwards, she just yells in surprise because she had so much love she had to let it out, which is Keiko comments easy to do when he's not around, I guess.
Yeah, Yeah, and it turns out that today it's actually the anniversary of the death of Moe's mother. So that's where he's gone. He's gone to like visit his mother's grave, and Mario is like, "Oh, he's such a private guy. It's kind of hard to ask him about." No, that's Keigo asking. Keigo saying that. Kind of hard to ask him about. And Mario is like, "Oh, why
No,
that
I think that's Khan saying that. Keiko is the
can't?"
one saying, I guess so. I pieced only parts of it together.
That's that, what couldn't they have named him Harry or something so that we didn't have two K names?
That's fine. I mean, you typically don't even remember Mahiru's name, even though it's the one with the name. So,
Yeah. So we have Mario questioning like, "Oh, we're his friends. It's cold of him to leave us out." Not really, Mario. Have some respect, but then again, you've been shouted for some time. You don't really know. You don't really know the concepts of like, okay, some things are private for a reason.
yeah. And also, yeah, I think that's just Mahiru's personality. He's just like, man, I don't understand how friendship works because I didn't have many friends. So it's kind of fun. And then, but as Nico brings up a good point where he says Moy isn't very good at judging the distance between himself and others because apparently yesterday, yeah, he didn't have too many friends when he was little because of his monstrous strength, as we learned. And then we see Moy at his mother's grave saying, Mom, there's something I haven't told you, but I'm going to try today. And we learned that apparently Moy lied a lot to his mom about having a lot of friends. And the reason he did that is because his mom, I guess, was the typical, oh, I'm always sick and down with illnesses. So she figured that uh, having her be relieved about him having friends would make her a little bit happier and less stressed out while she's sick.
Yeah.
So it's a nice sentiment, and I can see why he did that. But then confesses to his mom's grave that he lied. He didn't have any friends at all, and we get to see basically the time where Moy actually hurt somebody and how everyone got scared of him after that. He didn't have any friends except Nico, who did stay his friend.
which is
And
which I do like. I do like that happened. Like showing just how much Nico means to Moray.
yeah, I think it's also really nice just to because they are like our central pair. So it's nice to have chapters just focusing on their relationship. And then Nico Moy tries to get Nico away from him as well, saying he doesn't need friends anymore or something. And then Nico, of course, says don't say things like that, and then brings up a term called kotodama, which apparently is like I guess this sounds more like a psychological thing than a magical thing. But maybe there in Japan there's a magical aspect to it. But basically, if you keep telling yourself something, eventually that'll start having those effects on you. Like if you keep telling yourself like, "Oh, I'm like in a bad mood or I hate myself," it'll just depress you more than saying positive affirmations to yourself, for example. So in this
Well,
case, Moy saying I don't need any friends is going to make
I,
him more alone.
I think what it means here is that it's not magical. It's not magical. It's more like I think Nico has confused magic power with magic word because when you go, you didn't say the magic word.
Oh, yeah, it could be that too.
Yeah.
But then Nico, but based on her explanation, she's like, yeah, but witches are able to do stuff with words and make them into magic if you have symbols and stuff. And then Moy interprets that as, oh, okay, so it works if you write the spell down. And I'm like, maybe, I don't know how magic
May,
works in the world yet. And then immediately Nico gets an idea and she just goes off and tells Moy he can go home for today.
whenever Nico has an idea, even if this is just a flashback, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna plan out well. We know this by now.
Yeah, but at least this time it wasn't I'm going to launch a spell. She was just going to write a nice note to her friend. So anyway, so then she writes a letter because she believes a witch's words will have power in them if she writes them down. So it's a good idea. The
Yeah.
weird thing is we also see this ominous bird thing. I don't know if that's supposed to mean something because we know that. Keep in mind, Nemu is a cat. Is
Yes.
this a bird wizard slash witch? I don't know what warlock is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Warlock,
The
I think.
warlocks. Yeah.
Yeah. So is this a warlock? I don't know. Maybe.
Maybe a warlock from the past, or it might be Korn when he was younger, because isn't Korn meant to be
Oh
a
yeah, he's a
Tengu?
tengu, but I don't know if he can turn into an animal. I know he can control birds, so I see why you said that. But so maybe there's a tengu involved in this. That's a good thought, but I don't know if it's Khan because he was pretty young at this point. Maybe
Maybe,
one of his relatives.
maybe.
That could be interesting. And then um basically one of the bullies, uh, or one of Moy's old friends who are no longer friends with him, tore up Nico's note and I guess, threatened Nico to stop being friends with Moy.
Yeah.
Um, I don't really know what the plan with there was, but then Moy goes off looking for Nico, and then we see in the next page Nico just using magic on them to like
Which,
suffocate them in
which
midair.
I've got to say, that is the scariest version of Nico we have seen so far.
It really is, and it's actually a nice like look at this is what Nico could become if Moy wasn't there, right? If she and her friends weren't there, Nico would have become this very evil person. And I guess maybe it's also foreshadowing if she does start going evil.
Not just for her, but for Nemu as well. Like, can you imagine if Nemu was like that?
Well, I could, but at the same time, her magic is to turn herself into a cat. So I don't know what that's gonna do.
Maybe it'll turn into like a werecat.
Yeah, maybe. But Nico does that, and she looks terrifying. And then Moy immediately stops her from doing that while the kids like run off. And then Nico got really upset that her letter got ripped up. And I guess the next part is where Moy went off to collect the pieces and tape them back together.
Yeah.
And then she said, I guess Moy got all the pieces back and taped it together. So I guess she didn't know about it based on that. So probably
M-
did it after.
Probably. Yeah, because he says that he kept the letter for himself.
Yep. So, and then Nico then comments he was really alone a lot back then. So he got used to it. He's not very proactive when it comes to his friends, which yeah, I think that's kind of true. Of course, Mahiru brings up a good point that he was very proactive in inviting him to the house, but not Nemu.
Yeah, not Nemu. Not Nemu! I, just for record, everyone who's watching this, until Nemu gets in that house, I am going to be bringing up every single chapter that Nemu was in. Get in the house, Nemu.
Yeah, and I will just randomly remind it because it's fun. And
Yeah.
Zangetsu, I'm not really sure what the mountain lion comment means, but if you could explain that a bit more, because I don't know what that one
Oh, I
means.
think it might be. I think it might be referring to Nemu just randomly turns into a mountain lion if she
Oh,
gets
like if
mad.
she turned evil. Oh,
Yeah.
that would be kind of cool. She can get like a new cat form that's actually a threat. But
I would
anyway,
have I would have
Mahiru,
gone with a tiger more than a lion, but sure, let's go with
yeah,
lion.
yeah, Tiger would make sense considering his lineage. You're right. Anyway, so then Mahiru is really sad about hearing about all this, and Keiko's actually comforting him. Nice moment between them. And then Nico says, "All of you are much the same situation, though you're special cases." And then then Moy goes back. We go back to his grave, his mom's grave. Him saying, "But mom, it's different now. I have true friends."
Yeah,
And
and we see all the familiars and Nico. Not all the familiars and Nemu.
yeah, I mean, you are right. Nico is not a familiar, but yes, the other ones are familiars.
Yeah,
And yes, and get to have fun with D&D.
yeah. See you, man. Yeah,
Thanks for sticking around. Anyway, so then Nico basically just is grateful that Moy is starting to connect with people and is changing slowly over time. And then Moy keeps talking to a picture of I think it's a picture of his mom.
it is. It
Um,
is a picture of his mom.
yeah, so saying, yeah, I'm doing okay. You don't have to worry about me. And he says, Nico's still a handful. And this next line, he says, speaking of her, to me, she's thanks. And then goes to flashback as
Yeah,
soon as
it goes to flashback, and then it goes to flashback where I guess it's when Nico went off to do a witch training.
Yep. And then Moy says we're both born with special powers, so we have to learn to control them. And he's like, you have to learn magic. I have to learn ogre Kyong. And he's like, we're in this together. And I do like that he was probably thinking even during his training that, Nico's working hard at this, so should I?
Yeah.
And then Moy goes, Nico, I'll think of you and train really hard, okay? And Nico, they're both blushing, Nico and Moy. And Moy comes back with a quote saying, my best friend.
Which based on the end of the chapter, it probably wasn't meant to be that. It was probably meant to be, to me, she's my girlfriend.
Well, we'll get into that. I mean, I will say when I was first reading this chapter and said best friend, I thought, oh, that's a funny line to bring up because you see the two kids blushing. And in any other rom com, this is the part where they confess the feelings. But I actually also thought it was pretty sweet that Nico or Moy thought of Nico as his best friend because,
Yeah, that was
sometimes
sweet.
people can't just be best friends. But of course, Nico in the next panel is very upset. She was like, man, it was going well. We were blushing. I thought he was going to say he was going to marry me in the future. And everyone else is just like, oh boy, this again.
Yeah, just like ... But straight out of Whisper of the Heart, I still have yet to watch that.
I don't know what that is. That movie?
I think it's a Miyazaki film.
Ah, gotcha. So then, yeah, Nico's said, like, after we trained for a couple years, we came back for a reunion. But then Moy, because of all this training, he's now extremely stoic, and he's wrapped up in this idea of duty and protecting Nico that romance isn't even inside. So Nico is very frustrated with the unrequited love she has. And I love the line where it's like she's got a point. Things look pretty firmly stuck in the friend zone.
I wonder why. And then Neru gets the epiphany of what is going on here, because she remembers that from the flashback that words can have magical powers, and she's like, I've heard that too, especially by a witch can take on the power of a spell. A strong emotion is one thing, but there are other conditions for it to work. The subject has to be in a state of hypnosis, either that or they must be the subject to the words over and over for a long time. So yeah, he pretty much put the pieces back together right away, kept it on, and he was just seeing friend forever instead of I want to marry you in the future.
Yeah, so basically, because Moy kept reading a note that's saying Nico, him saying, I'll be your friend forever, that was firmly entrenched in his head and possibly cursed him, as Nemu speculates at the very end. Like Nico may have accidentally cursed Moy into never having feelings for her, which is the most hilarious thing. But I do want to say like a very tiny, not all that big gripe. Based on the way this chapter went, this seems like a very important chapter, right? Because it kind of illustrates one potential reason that Moy may not recognize the feelings Nico has, and in an interesting way. And it's obviously going to be like a roadblock for them in developing a relationship, which the series is likely going to do. And since that is the case, I almost would have liked it if we saw, and maybe we did. I will say that I could just miss this detail, but I wish we could have saw this note lying around somewhere. Maybe we didn't read it. Maybe we saw a taped up piece of paper around. Maybe we did get a glimpse of what the paper said, but we just know that at some point Nico wrote him a nice note as kids, and then the importance of that note could have came into play here. I think that would have been very good foreshadowing, and it could have showed us that Moy does treasure his friendship with Nico, but treasuring that friendship like placed him under a curse.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Like maybe if we saw the note a little bit earlier, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know if the mangaka had that in mind in the beginning. Of course, it could have been something they just came up with recently. In which case, obviously, they couldn't foreshadow it. But
it probably
this author was very good at foreshadowing. So I feel like, given their skill level, if they had it planned, they should have done it earlier. But yeah, I think I'm with you. I feel like they may have just not had this idea before.
Yeah, but I want to say one thing I do like on the last page is that instead of having the black to be continued, it actually has it in a speech bubble.
Yeah, so which I guess the next chapter will continue from this plot point, which will be interesting because then, like, Nemu's the only one who's figured this out.
Which
so
makes
the question going to be like, okay, how do I tell Nico about this, or how can we test this? And
Oh,
then Nico,
you know what she'll probably do? She'll
she's
use
gonna
it.
move into the house and
No,
help.
no, no. She's gonna use it on Keigo.
Oh, she's gonna test if she can do the same. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, she's gonna test it on Keigo, because I'd possibly put a crescent moon on there.
Well, I mean,
See,
you can't do that because then if once the Keiko knows there's a moon there, he'll probably get rid of it. But I think you're right. They could leave a note there, or I guess unless they leave, Nemu finds a way to cleverly hide the crescent moon where it's not super obvious.
maybe we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, that was Witch Watch, and now we can move on to Mission Yozakura family.
Yep. Which for those who didn't catch the early parts of our stream, this was the chapter of the week for both of us.
Yeah, yeah. And also we get a color page, another color page, with all the family, including I there, going for a family walk. Although it's kind of hilarious because Sacred Hero pointed this out that the English translation of this color page did Karicho dirty.
Yeah, because they cut him out some reason completely.
Well, no, they didn't cut him out. If you look really closely, he's clinging to the tree and his face is hidden behind the Y.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that is true. You're right. I can see his hands and legs when I zoom in, like really quick. Which, yeah, that is depressing. But I mean, I don't know why they did that, but it's hilarious once you realize they did that.
It's hilarious. But yeah, continuing on from the last chapter, we have Tayu staring down Momo as Momo says, "A husband who protects the family head. That's so beautiful." As he's still crying, but looking freaky as it as well. And he says, "You two remind me of Ri and myself," which gets me worried about what might actually happen to Tayo in the future.
Yeah, same here, my friend. Because this is where Momo ended up. Where's Tayu gonna end up?
Yeah, especially if Momo can go beyond even the 1,000 Professor Blooming himself.
Maybe. But I think what adds to the terror there is like the next parts where he's like, "We would often go out with me as a bodyguards. Do you two go walks together with Goliath too?" And I'm just like, oh, of course they put that there because they always go on walks with Goliath.
Yeah.
So they're really trying to hammer that point home about Goliath had a hard time with Momo, just like he had with Tayo. And I mean, although I'm not sure why that is because I wouldn't have bought the dog together, but whatever. Either way, they went shopping together, which they also did. Oh man! And so they're all trying to tie him. Like, man, Tayo, you have a lot of similarities with Momo.
Yeah, this is freaking me out more the more I think about it. But it's counterbalanced, like I said in my review, where I cannot take Momo seriously in that love heart costume in the flashback.
Yep, that is a good point. And then he keeps yammering on, and then at some point Tayo says, "Please stop. You're hurting Mutsumi."
Yeah, and that face is like, oh my word, that just freaks me out.
Mm-hmm. Yep, a lot of creepy faces from Momo here. And then Tayu keeps on saying, "I don't know much about you, but I do understand wanting to get your family back. Still, if this was the correct answer, I'm certain everyone would be way more thrilled about it. They wouldn't be hurting like this. So please just stop." So last chapter, I predicted that Tayu would have a big speech, but this is honestly like this all he really says in this chapter. So I was kind of wrong about that.
Yeah.
And in the speech itself, I wasn't really impressed with it either, just because he's like, "I'm pretty sure you're on the wrong here just because everyone else is freaking out." And I'm like, there's very more reasons than just that, Tayu.
Yeah, that's very considering the fact that Momo has his wife's heart that's still beating and trying to bring her back whilst trying to make out like, oh, you're going to be a family while sitting on a pile of corpses.
Yeah, several innocent people.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And like I said last chapter, you have a scumbag but a great villain when Koichiro is one of the people getting freaked out by this.
Yep. So Tayo's speech didn't really impress me much, but Koichiro's, I think, very short speech was nice because he literally said to his father, "Our parents are dead, and there's no home for you to return to." It's like that's just the eldest son saying that straight to the dad. And then I love the way they build up to the next part because they just have Momo just like reach his face and you think he's gonna cry, but he just starts scratching his face somehow
Yeah.
with gloves. I
The
don't get that, but
now I was confused by this because I thought this was the Simonian coming off his body when I did my review. I was confused by is this blood from his body? Is he scratching so hard that it's actually bleeding him, or is it just the Simonian coming off?
based on the textures we see, I'm like fairly convinced this is blood.
Yeah, which if that's the case, that is like freaky as that, especially when he's got like the Makima control devil eyes.
Yeah, which we'll get to that. But basically, Momo just goes on another rant saying, "Why won't you understand? All this time I've suffered from guilt. My whole heart's been beating for your sakes. Yet you kids are bound by the past." And I think you said in your review, I think you're the one who's bound by the past, Momo.
Yeah. Yeah, you're the one who's bound by the past, Momo, because you won't accept that your wife is gone and not coming back. Or although, given the fact that I'm kind of like thinking like Ree will probably come back and probably take over.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a whole other thing, but yeah, possibly it could go that way. And then he says, "Where are your positive attitudes, your forgiveness, your mercy?" And I'm like, you do realize what you did doesn't deserve any of those things, right?
Yeah,
Your positive
yeah. Because,
attitudes.
like I said, I did bring up your comment that you left of like, will Momo get a redemption arc? It's like, no, he is not getting a redemption arc after this.
I mean, the way I've seen other manga go, I could see them try to force one. I hope they don't, but we'll see. I mean, it would be nice if they just didn't. But continuing onwards, Momo says, "So be it. I didn't want to do this, but this is sorry. This is for all the hope you'll grow and mature properly in the future. Bad boys and girls must be punished by their fathers." And this face like really creeped me out.
Oh yeah,
Just
definitely.
like this is where like you said, I think the first page made it seem strange if it was like his powers or something. But I think what you see this, you can be sure like that's blood because of the stains they leave and the way it's
Yeah,
spread.
yeah.
And so then he like reaches out his hand. Everyone's on guard for a second. And then like immediately he grabs his own hand. And I was confused because I thought this was going to be a technique. But like he bends his hand backwards and bites into his fingers. And yeah, again, more blood just comes gushing out because he bit him that hard. He
I
starts talking.
thought that, yeah, but I was more convinced that's saliva because it doesn't look like it's not the same texture of the blood. And you see on the next page, you see saliva drawing from his mouth.
Oh yeah, I mean, I just assume that's bloody saliva, honestly.
Might
Um,
be, who knows?
Yeah, that's what I assumed it was. But anyway, continuing, he's starting to say, "No, enough, calm down. You love them, right? Forgive their maturity. It's too soon." And then I think this is a good point you brought up. That is this Momo just talking to himself? Is he just going completely insane and starting to have monologues? Or is this another person in his head saying, talking to him, saying, "But
My
you're
theory, my theory is that it's Sabumi because Sabumi did create Momo in the first place.
And yeah, that is a one possible theory. I'm not too sure because I think they said Subumi is weakening.
Weakening,
Um,
but who's to say that she can't get her conscience into Momo?
yeah, true. So, and the reason I'm not 100% convinced, because when I was reading it the first time, I thought, okay, this is just Momo talking to himself, is because Vigilantes did something very similar, where the main antagonist had like a figure they were talking to in their head. And I was like, oh, this is just a split personality, because the image took the form of, I guess this is spoilers for Vigilantes. I don't really mind spoiling Luke, but for anyone else, just so you know. So, like the main villain, he was speaking to someone who was like another major pro hero, and I was like, okay, well, obviously that guy, we know what happened to that guy, and he ended up being a, he's obviously not living inside his head. So I thought to myself, okay, so either A, this is that hero's quirk factor talking to him, because quirk factors are weird and can do that, or it's a hallucination of this villain who idolized that hero, who's saying, like, yeah, this is what my hero would tell me in this situation. But it's really just him talking to himself. And a lot of other panels made it seem like, yeah, this is definitely him talking to himself. But it was eventually shown that it was not him talking to himself or the quirk factor. It was just all for one speaking into his head.
Okay. All
So,
right.
yeah, at this point, it really could be someone like Sabumi doing the similar thing. So that's why I don't want to rule it out, even though it's not what I initially thought.
Either Sabumi or Ri herself.
Yeah, or Ray herself, which could make sense of why she would be defending her kids here right now,
Yeah.
which would be even more freaky. So then they say, Momo says, it's fine, I'm fine, don't need to be hasty. Love and hate are two sides of the same coin. I know they actually love me.
No.
And then he basically says, I'll step aside. I'm more than used to waiting because I've endured this long. I know someday you'll forgive me, accept me. And when that day comes, let's be a family again. And
Or
my
let's
God,
have
will spread.
yeah. Or let's have freedom like Eren Yeager.
Yeah, and I've seen both panels, and it almost seems like an easy homage to make. I wouldn't be surprised, but it's also still just a really good page either way.
Yeah,
Just
it
you can
is.
see like all the blood just on his hands and robe and his face, which is all like it's not even like he was in a fight. He did that all to himself
Yeah, he
out of
did.
anger. This dude is insane, man. And then he starts disintegrating into flower petals, as he usually does. Anyway, so then Koichiro tries to stop him along with the rest of his family, saying, "We're ending this here and now."
Yeah, but
While
also
they're
as well,
getting,
I just want to quickly say again, the fact that Creature is calling him a file beast means that he is worse than the guy who's overprotective of the sister.
oh yeah, you did bring that up, and he definitely doesn't see him as like his father anymore. It's another great
No.
show to that. And then at that point, Tayo just collapses on the ground. And I like how in this panel, like we see Furuba slowly glance back, but Kuichiro not even looking back, while Mutsumi is like the one who's majorly concerned. And apparently, this is just Tayo just dealing with all the ramification of his fight with Koichiro and all the poison he took in. But luckily, apparently, Tayo will be fine. He just needs time to recover from the fight. And then all the siblings are about to stop him. I like how they don't lose focus, even though Tayo is fainted, because they could have easily made it where they lost focus on Momo for a second, and that's why he got away. But really, they were like, okay, they're too blinded by we need to take this guy out now. But
Yeah.
at the same time, Momo's just so OP, he teleports before they can even touch him. As I think this is Shion says, too slow by a hair. I don't know if it's just by a hair. I feel like it's more than that, but whatever. Anyway, so then Tayo's still fine. He's just tired. Futaba says her arm is healed, but Nana's like, no, that's not how arm healing works.
I know.
And then everyone else is concerned about, of course, Momo and what he said, because at this point, Sabumi is weak, and presuming the heads are all dead. So there's no other forces keeping him at bay. So they have to like prepare themselves for what's to come, because otherwise his version of love will once again destroy the family. So right now it's like we've come to the point where they have to go prepare to fight their dad.
Yeah,
He's
which
like the only major antagonist they are aware of, because there's another antagonist Koichiro alluded to, but they aren't aware of except for him.
yeah, and like Furman said, like, oh, this might potentially be the final arc. So I don't see it being the final arc because of that plot point, and like we were saying, like we still don't know much about Kai and what he's up to. Like, does Kai have the Hasuka the Tampopo drug, because I'm pretty sure Momo must have some of them stashed away somewhere to get more people to get blooming without actually having to use the Simone blood.
Yep, which definitely I agree with Luke that there's a lot more story beats that they could dig into. If
Yeah,
the story author really wanted to, or if I don't know why they would at this point. It seems like just like the biggest shoot yourself in the foot moment. But if the magazine was trying to say, okay, Yozakura, you get one more arc, then yes, they could end it after this because it would resolve the biggest plot points of the story. But at the same time, at this stage, they're losing so many of their other series that Yozakura should be like one of the big series they push
they push, and
from now on.
they seem to be really pushing it now. Now, in terms of what will happen next, briefly, I can honestly see after this we have a few light-hearted chapters, especially after this.
Yeah, and I think that it's a well deserved break for the series to do that. Although I can see some people probably being a little disappointed by it just because it'll distract from the plot again. But in this case, I feel like the last sled of slice of life chapters prove that the series is now in its what is it, sophomore or junior year? Junior year. It's able to balance slice of life and plot more in those
Yeah,
mini arcs in
yeah.
between story beats.
So for slice of life, what the slice of life coming up, possibly, what would you most like to see?
Right. So let me see. I think one thing is we're going to need to get Kai more involved in story one because I think he's going to be a big player later on. So I think we should have him being brought in. Another thing is I think Skyzet said this on Twitter, but there's a lot of side characters that they
Yeah,
really don't dedicate much time to. What they did in the beginning, but then they focused on the family, which I thought was fine. But if they want those characters to be important and not like the characters from Vigilantes that I just kind of forget about by the end, they should bring them in for this arc and really spend some time with them
yeah.
because
I was just gonna say, like I said on Sky said in the Discord, where we have Rin and Sho who had the Tampopo drug themselves, and it's just a question of like, can they activate blooming themselves? Are they the 100% compatible users as well?
hmm and then maybe, although it might be too soon, train up I a little bit. I don't know how she'll be involved
Yeah,
in this fight, if at all, but I think some training with her would be nice
some
because
training
there'd be
with
a good
her.
balance of plot and slice of life.
Yeah, I get the feeling that we'll see because they set up her going to kindergarten. I get the feeling we'll get a chapter of her in kindergarten, and she inadvertently activates her blooming for for whatever reason happens because
I mean,
we
I
do
would like. Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
just gonna say, yeah, we do know it because I did bring it up with the blooming. Like it's confirmed that she does have a blooming. We just don't know what it is yet. In the same way, we don't know what Momo's blooming is. That's another thing why I'm feeling like we need to see most definitely Koichiro's blooming and Momo's blooming. They're the two big ones.
Yeah, and what I was gonna say with I is, yeah, with her blooming, I would rather be in a more story centric chapter than, oh, I'm in kindergarten, I got into a fight with one of the kids, because I feel like her blooming, if it's just used against in like a silly way like that, then it kind of diminishes it. Unless it's more like we get to see a glimpse of it.
That's what I'm saying. Just a glimpse of it. Not like how when in one of the chats where we saw Koichiro's eyes glowing and we thought like, oh, okay, is he gonna activate his blooming?
Yeah. So I think if that would be okay if we do it that way. I just don't want to see it full on, like in a silly chapter.
Oh no, no, I didn't mean it like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then of course I want to see my boy Sosuke. He's one of my favorites outside the
Of course,
family.
of course you do. Of course you do. And also, I want to see Ayako again and another Shinzo chapter with her. Like, just have the most socially awkward member with the most eccentric uh, uh, per- person who's part of the family, while not really
Oh,
while not being a member of the family.
I also think you also brought a good point about talking to the grandma. as
Yeah,
well.
that's
Talking to the
nothing.
grandparents in general, but of
Yeah,
course the grandma especially.
the grandma, especially because she is the eighth head of the Yozakura, and they've not brought her up at all.
Yeah, so I think that would be another good thing to bring up. So yeah, a lot of stuff, and then of course we maybe this will be at the end of the slice of life chapters, but at some point I do want to see Sabumi again, just because if not just the tree version of her Momo's talking to, the one inside Tayo, because we don't know what's going on with her right now. Like if she could verify some stuff for us, like maybe she'll say, "Oh, don't worry, the heads are not dead," or she'll say, "Oh, this is what's going on with Momo, or this is the deal I had with him." Like, I feel like that would be great to see as well.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. But
So, yeah, lots to do, frankly, even
l-
before we get into the fight with Momo,
lots to do, lots to do. Yeah, but
and even
yeah,
after the fight.
and even after the fight, depending on what comes next. But yeah, that was the stream, guys. Thank you for joining us, and hope whoever watches this back enjoys it. But until next time, we shall see you later.